What's up, legends? Chronos back at it again with What If Deku Had Cell's Abilities, Part 2. This ain't the finale, so stick around because it's only getting crazier from here. Huge shout out to my guy, Big Teddy G3498, for collaborating on this. You've been showing mad love and support, and I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you. Chapter 8, Friends. The four changed into their school uniforms and grouped up to head out. Izuku was excited to go with his new friends, but first, before I can go, I need to tell Nizu. All right, let's go, Mina said, leading the way. Where are we going? She stopped and turned to Izuku. Izuku smiled and led them up the stairs and to the principal's office. He knocked and waited. Namuri taught him to do that. The door opened and Izuku strolled in. Hey Nizu, I'm going out with these guys to eat something. Also, I don't have money. Of course, keep your phone on yourself in case you need to contact us. And here, he handed Izuku a card. Namuri said she taught you how to use it, correct? Izuku nodded. It's not limitless, so buy only what you require. Truthfully, it was a credit card with an obscene amount of credit, but Izuku didn't need to know that. Sometime in the future, we'll speak about managing your finances. For now, go enjoy yourselves. He smiled at the feral boy. Izuku bounded out of the office and met up with his classmates. They walked out the gate and made their way to the streets. Izuku hadn't gone out since Namuri took him out to get necessities for himself. He had spent time with her as she taught him some basic stuff, but he was mainly isolated in the walls of UA. He had found no need to leave. After all, he had all he needed: food, a place to sleep, and an extensive library. As they began to walk, Shoji spoke. Izuku, may I ask what you do in your free time? Library, probably. Shinso smirked. Yep, the library at UA is pretty big. I like to read. Izuku said happily. Oh, like what? Romance novels. Mina teased. Are there hidden, dirty magazines somewhere in there? The library is pretty clean and there aren't many magazines. But no, I researched the anatomy and biology of different things. Right now, I was reading about neurobiology. The clueless boy shot down Mina's teasing with logic. Mina pouted slightly and Shinso narrowed his eyes slightly at his response. All that for your quirk? Jairu asked with a raised eyebrow at the pink girl. Yeah, at first I could do basic stuff with my quirk like closing cuts or making claws, but for more detailed stuff I needed to know what I was doing. My legs were first. I hunted another wolf and learned how their legs worked. Now I can do much more, he explained. What more can you do, other than your arms and shifting into whatever Shinso teased about? Shoji was interested in what he could learn from the feral boy with a more advanced version of his quirk. I can make permanent changes to my body. Like my legs, I don't focus on keeping them like this. That's how they are now unless I change them. He went on to list what he changed in his body. The three new friends were both impressed and a bit horrified at what he had done. I also fixed my ribs. I can put a hardened mesh between the ribs for extra protection. I also need to think about the heat pit snakes have. Hagakure made me think of that. Izuku said the last part more to himself. That's incredible. You did all that by yourself? Shoji complimented. It's serious hardcore. Jairu agreed and Mina nodded emphatically. Asato helped me find what I needed to read for the information, but yep. It took a while though. Too much changing at the same time can empty my fuel. Asato? Mina asked. She is the librarian that worked or owned the library near my old den. She was very nice. I want to go visit sometime. Izuku smiled at the older librarian. Meanwhile, Katsuki opened the door to his home. His mother was at the desk in the living room working on a new clothes design. How was your first day, brat? She didn't look at him as she greeted her hard-headed son. Mom, Katsuki said softly. Mitsuki immediately knew something was wrong when Katsuki didn't greet her with the same brash attitude he had with everyone. She dropped what she was doing and whipped around to Katsuki. What's going on? She asked worriedly as she stood. He opened his mouth a few times and then spoke. Izuku is alive and at UA. Inko, she dash. Wait, hold on. Izuku, you saw him? Her eyes began to water at the thought of her nephew. She pulled Katsuki to the sofa and sat down so he could explain. Start from the beginning, please. So Katsuki did. He explained how he saw Izuku in his classroom and how odd he was. Then he began to talk about his story. He said Auntie Inko abandoned him in the woods when the doctor said he was quirkless. Mitsuki reeled back as if she were struck at her closest friend, almost sister, doing such a thing. She wouldn't. Her voice wobbled. Katsuki nodded and wiped a tear from his eye. A girl could tell he was telling the truth. Inko left him to die in the woods alone. Mitsuki sobbed at his statement. Katsuki would never lie, and never about something so serious. And Izuku? Did people find him? He was all right. She had to know about Izuku. He shook his head. He said he lived in the woods for years. It was only a month ago when he took the exam and teachers asked him about the information missing on the application. He lived alone in the woods hunting and survived. Yue made him a ward of the school and he lives there now. Mitsuki sobbed only harder at the thought of the child, her nephew, living in the woods alone like that. She kept crying until she could speak again. Did he look all right? He looked happy. He said he hunted a lot and he was strong. His quirk was freaky, he can change his body. He even had a friend, I think. Mitsuki pulled Katsuki into a hug. She had lost a sister and Katsuki had lost his aunt. He didn't say anything, but he held tightly onto her and cried silently with her. Izuku. Shinso spoke furrowed brow but was trying to contain a smile. Yeah. The feral boy opened the sandwich and sniffed it as he checked every layer of the meal. He then picked it up and bit into it. He made a sound of appreciation for the taste. Mina had pasta, Jairu a soup, Shoji some fried fish, and Shinso a stir-fry. He paused. Do you know how to use utensils? Everyone at the table froze and turned to Izuku. Oh yeah, of course I do. I forgot to mention I brought my... He paused and looked at the chopsticks in their hands. Eating sticks with me when was dropped off at the woods, he said sarcastically. He giggled. Namuri explained sarcasm to me. Mina inhaled what she had in her mouth and began to choke. Shinso began to wheeze in laughter. Jairu bit her lip as she both tried to help Mina not die and hold in her laughter. Shoji sat stock still as he tried to process what Izuku just said and then began to chuckle with mirth. Once Mina got the food down her throat, she howled in laughter. Eating sticks. The UA students got some looks of annoyance, but some shook their heads at the youths. Izuku enjoyed their mirth as he bit into his tasty sandwich. They finished their laughing and looked at Izuku eating with a smile aimed at them. To be fair, I never needed to learn. He shrugged. You know you'll have to learn someday. Shinso wiped a tear from his eye. I don't know, this sandwich is pretty good. I think I'll manage without. He did glance at their food and it did smell good. Did you learn anything fun while in the woods? Jairu asked. I taught myself how to swim. That was fun, it's harder now with my weight. Climbing trees are really fun, especially jumping from one to another. Hunting is always nice, although I wish there were more animals to hunt. Oh, that tree hopping does sound fun, Mina said. They kept chatting as they ate their meals. They talked about their other classmates and then the heroes that were supposed to teach them. Izuku thoroughly enjoyed his time with his new friends. When it came to splitting off and heading to their homes, they exchanged phone numbers. The three new friends headed to the train station and Shinso and Izuku were left. Wanna head back now? Shinso asked his friend. He stayed behind for the express purpose to make sure Izuku didn't get lost and ended up somewhere he didn't want to go. All right, let's go. Izuku began to walk. He was grabbed by the arm and turned in the right direction. Are you sure? I thought it was this way. How can you have an impeccable sense of direction in the woods and not in the streets where everything is labeled? Shinso asked in disbelief. Izuku made an I don't know sound and kept walking with Shinso. When we get back, do you want to see my new den? Sure. I've got time. He slipped his phone out of his pocket and sent a message to his mother. Nice there. The UA woods? It's all right. Smaller than the one near your house. He shrugged. They arrived back at UA and Izuku first brought Shinso to his room to change quickly. He produced the key from his arm and struggled a bit before getting the key in the lock. Shinso didn't react to the key sliding out of his skin like a parasite. This is nice. The bed is soft too. He looked around as Izuku changed out of his uniform without an ounce of shame. All right, let's go. Izuku turned to the nearest door to his room and walked out. He picked up Shinso with tendrils and ignored his complaints. His legs changed and they were off. This time he made sure Shinso was suspended in the air instead of strapped to his back for a smoother ride. Halfway into the woods, he slowed down and set his friend down so they could walk. He stumbled a bit but was used to Izuku's speed. The first thing they saw was the large pond in front of the large tree. "This is nice, very relaxing. That your den?" He pointed at the rounded wood planks with his signature on them. "Yep. Wanna see inside?" He bounded over to the hole in the ground. Shinso shrugged. "Why not?" He peered into the opening and saw a thick root. He grabbed it and swung down. It was slightly larger than the room in the building. One side had a variety of skulls, and a corner was a pile of pelts with planks under them for support. "This is comfortable." He sat on the furs to try it out. It was ridged but gave some under his weight. Izuku returned from his quick hunt with 2 hares. Shinso crawled out and saw his friend blowing at a fire. The 2 small carcasses gave away why the fire. "Snack." Izuku held up one hare by the ears. "Never tried rabbit or whatever that is?" "Sure, I'll take a leg." Shinso sat down on a log. "Can I ask you about Kaken?" "Sure. I don't mind, but I barely remember anything anyways." He skinned the animals and set the pelt to dry. He took one head and popped it into his mouth raw. Shinso didn't even bat an eye. "Were you too close?" "I think so. I remember his mother was like an aunt to me, and by how he was talking about my mother, it was the same for him. I think they were close friends before we were born." He felt a slight flare of anger at his mother, but it died quickly. "You going to visit them?" Izuku slowly turned the skewed animals. "If they ask, then sure." "Why are you so curious?" "It's like a story about old friends reuniting after something tragic happened." He shrugged and took the leg of the hare that was proffered. He bit into the hot meat. "Tender, I like this. Needs seasoning though." "You always say that." He rolled his eyes and took a bit out of the other leg, bone and all. They chatted for a bit longer until Izuku's arm vibrated and beeped. He extracted it and pressed the button. "Izuku, once you have some time, please come up to my office." Nizu asked of him. "Sure, I'll be there soon." The light on the device turned off and it sunk back into his skin. "It's getting late anyway. Give me a ride back?" Shinso stood and dusted his pants. Izuku put out the fire and carried his friend. They split off and Izuku walked upstairs to Nizu's office. He could smell someone new with Nizu. He paused and knocked. Nizu called him in and Izuku strolled in. The stranger was plain looking with a white button-up shirt and black pants. "Just on time." "Izuku, this is Detective Tsukachi." "Detective, this is formerly Izuku Midoriya, now Izuku Kayama." "Please sit." Nizu introduced the two. Izuku scanned the man up and down before sitting. "What did you need?" "Oh, was it the card?" "Here." He held the credit card out to Nizu that slid out of his hand. "No, you keep that with you in case you need to purchase something." "No, this is about the trial for your mother. It would be prudent to have Tsukachi take your statement about what had happened for the court hearing." Nizu explained. Izuku nodded along. "I understood a third of that. What's a trial and court hearing? Also, why does Tsukachi need to take my statement?" Nizu chuckled a bit and went on to explain what both terms were. "As for why the good detective, because of his quirk, truth detector. Anything you say, he will be able to tell if you are lying or not. This will be incredibly useful for the trial if a statement taken by the detective is given to the judge. While most likely unnecessary with the proof given, better safe than sorry." "That makes sense, so what now?" Izuku looked between the two. "Wait, Nizu, I don't intend to harm you in any way. I forgot about that." Tsukachi raised an eyebrow at the phrase, and then looked to Nizu, whose shoulders dipped slightly. "Thank you, Izuku. That does indeed help with your presence. Now, on to the matter at hand. The detective will ask you questions, and you will answer them to the best of your abilities." He waved at the detective to begin. For the next hour, Izuku was asked about everything that had happened since Inko Midoriya left him in the woods. He explained everything without hesitation. From the rag she put on his face to make him fall asleep to the time he killed his first deer. They focused a lot on his last interaction with his mother, but Izuku had no problem remembering what she had said to him. Then they got to more recent events. When you reached the city, why didn't you tell someone about your situation? Tsukachi asked. I didn't need to. I had food, a den, and the library was right there. He shrugged. And the librarian, Asato, she never said anything? Last time we spoke she thought I was homeless, but since I was well-fed and stuff, she let it be. And Hitoshi Shinso, he never offered help? Help with what? Izuku tilted his head. You living in the woods. He came to talk and hang out a lot, that was nice. His mother grounded him because he thought I wanted to be kept a secret, but I never told him that. He helped with some clothes I stole from him. Does that count? Nizu hid a smile by drinking some tea. Tsukachi chucked slightly. We'll say he did. From there you worked on taking the UA exam. Anything of note happened then? Nope. I took the exam. Nizu called me over for some questions, and now I'm here. Thank you, Izuku, for your forthrightness. Not once did my cork go off during your statement. He smiled at the feral boy. The trial is set for tomorrow, correct? Nizu asked the detective. Correct. They said it after school lets out. Tsukachi confirmed. The trial for my mother is tomorrow. Why did it take so long? Izuku asked. Bureaucracy, there's some paperwork that needs to be done before a trial began, and some people are dreadfully slow at it. Nizu gave out an exasperated sigh. So, tomorrow after class we will go to the trial for my mother? That is if you do not wish to participate in it? Nizu proposed. It's fine, I'll go. Very well, that was all for today. Nizu smiled. All right, I'll see you later then. Bye, Tsukachi. He waved at the two and left the office. Tsukachi watched him go and then turned to Nizu. What was that earlier about him not harming you? I believe young Izuku developed an aura of a predator of the highest degree. Both Hound Dog and I were put under his presence, and it felt like a pair of jaws ready to clamp onto my neck in a moment. There were 2 students with animal quirks in his class that had the same issue until Izuku stated to them he meant no harm to them. Aizawa reported they released tension in their bodies as if they were ready to run to safety. Neither could even look at him without shaking. Quite marvelous, don't you think? Nizu smiled and took a sip of his now cooled tea. Is it pheromones or something? Tsukachi asked. No, not as far as I could tell. It's all his presence that causes it. Izuku walked through the halls back to the woods. His feet claws tapped on the linoleum of the floor. He was in deep thought about the day to come. He wasn't sure what to feel at the thought of seeing his mother again. He felt angry at the thought of her, but also saddened at what she had done to him. He changed course and headed to his room instead. He wants to do some research with the books he had stored away, and maybe work on his handwriting skills. They still were atrocious. Chapter 9. Classes. Izuku woke before the sun was visible in the sky. He sat up and felt a pain in his back and noticed he fell asleep on his desk. He got up from the chair and made his back give various cracks and pops as his spine straightened out. With a sigh of relief, he went out the door and to the woods for breakfast. After cleaning up and showering, he changed into his uniform. He headed to the doors marked 1A as students began to stream into the buildings. He wasn't the first one there as he walked in. A boy with split hair colors sat in his seat reading a book. He looked up and nodded in greeting. Izuku waved and turned to find out where he sat. He had no clue. With pursed lips and turned to the smell of the sleeping man under the teacher's desk. He walked silently to his desk and leaned over it to be able to see his homeroom teacher. Izuku's hair fell up and he tried to figure out a way to wake the grumpy teacher. He didn't have to as Aizawa's closed eye opened partly. What do you want, feral brat? He softly said. Izuku whispered in return. He had learned that was the best way to wake the hero. Where do I sit? Third seat back, next to the windows. He snuggled deeper in his sleeping bag when he finished. Izuku leaned back and met eyes with Todoroki, who was watching him curiously. He gave him a smile that showed all his teeth and moved to his seat. It was reinforced. He sat down and it didn't even make a noise. He pulled out his tablet given to him by Nizu for taking notes until his handwriting had improved. A few minutes passed and more classmates walked through the door. Mina gave him a wave and smile as she walked through the door. Izuku returned the gesture and she approached him to chat. How'd you sleep?
Mina started.
My back hurt when I woke. I think it was because I fell asleep at my desk. Does that happen? She giggled a bit. Yep, if you sleep in a weird position, it can hurt your back. You never had that problem before? Izuku shook his head. I think when I first slept in my first cave it did. How many places did you sleep in? Like how many caves? Mina asked. 3 places, the cave near where I first woke up. The den I stole from some badgers by Shinso's house, and now my new den here. He pointed out the window to the woods. What, did you wait for the badgers to leave and then steal it? Mina laughed. No, I ate them. He said it as it was obvious. She snorted at that. What did they taste like? They are in the middle for taste. Deer are usually the best for quantity and quality. Birds are the worst because of the feathers. That makes sense. Mina nodded. Wanna try some? Izuku pulled out a bag of cooked badger meat he cooked up that morning. Mina raised an eyebrow and smiled. You just have that in your pocket? In case I get hungry. He shrugged. What is this? Shinso approached from behind Mina and took a piece of cooked meat. He sniffed it. Badger. Izuku nodded and Shinso took a bite. Needs seasoning. Mina went with the flow and took a piece. That was tasty. You sure know how to get to a woman's heart. Huh. She tried to tease. Through the 3rd and 4th rib, right? Shinso snorted loudly behind Izuku and Mina burst out laughing. Shinso patted his shoulder. Never changed, Izuku. Izuku was thoroughly confused at what was happening. Don't worry about it, Izuku. Mina waved his confusion away. I don't think your usual methods will work on him. Jairu and Shoji joined them. I've noticed, Mina grumbled. Excuse me? But you don't appear to be wearing your tie. Where is it? The tall blue-haired boy approached Izuku and chopped his arm down. Oh right, here it is. He pulled it out of his pocket next to the bag of snacks. Why are you not wearing it? It is required by the student handbook. I never got a student handbook. Izuku shrugged. Also, I don't know how to wear one. Like the knot thing. That gave Ida pause. In a quieter voice he said. I see, my apologies. Don't worry, Izuku. I'll teach you. Mina was eager to jump on the opportunity. Izuku, I like that. Thanks, Mina. She took Shinso's tie off his neck before he could react. Mina, why did you take mine? Use yours. She explained why she couldn't by unclipping hers and putting it on Shinso's collar. Jairu snorted at the display. All right, copy me. Izuku stood and followed the pink girl's movements. After a few failed tries, he finally got it and had a straight tie. She tightened it on his collar and smiled. Thanks, Mina. Izuku beamed. I remember watching the YouTube video until I remembered it step by step. She loosened the tie and gave it back to Shinso. YouTube? Izuku asked. Mina gasped. You poor boy. Kaken walked through the doors at that moment and focused on his old friend. He walked up to him apprehensively. Izuku, Kaken. Nice to see you again. He beamed to his old friend. Can we talk at lunch? He asked. Izuku shrugged. Sure. I don't mind. To your seats. Aizawa rose from his position under the desk. Good. Just to get this out of the way. Does everyone know about Izuku's dash? He waved his hand at the feral boy. Situation. Everyone nodded. Good. Now you know if he does something weird or whatever. No new announcement for today. Your next class will start in a moment. Cementos walked through the door at that moment and gave a greeting to everyone. Aizawa slipped out the door and class began. Taking notes for Izuku was very easy. He split his digits and typed every word Cementos spoke. Thankfully, the keyboard was completely silent as his hands were a blur. It distracted a few for a moment, but they learned to ignore the bizarre scene. Soon class came to an end and Izuku opened a new page to type his notes. Izuku? Shiro asked next to the feral boy. Yeah, why are you using a computer to take notes? Wouldn't it be easier to write? Some of the class was paying attention to the conversation. Izuku took out a post-it note from his bag and wrote his name. He handed it to Shiro and he was surprised at the writing. I caught up with my studies, but I neglected my writing skills. Oh, I'm sorry. Shiro tried to apologize. Why are you sorry? Izuku tilted his head in confusion. Shiro looked a bit awkward at that. Shinso spoke up from behind Izuku. It's a way to show sympathy for another. Also, email me those notes and I'll bring you food tomorrow. Izuku nodded in understanding. Not your fault. he said to Siro, and he gave a small smile towards him. And what's email? He turned to his friend. A way to message people through the internet. Kaken spoke up and watched Izuku interact with others. Oh, thanks Kaken. At that moment, Midnight walked through the door to begin the next class. Hello, class. You can call me Kayama or Midnight. Either is fine. She stood in front of the podium with her folder. Kaminari raised his hand and asked, Kayama as in Izuku Kayama? He pointed at the class feral. Yep. I didn't want my old family name, so I asked her if I could use her family name since I was dead. And Nizu needed to do stuff so I would be alive again. He quickly explained. That's right. Without an ounce of shame, he asked for my name. She tried to tease him. Most of the class guffawed at that and shot Izuku looks. Sadly, teasing him never works. I still don't understand. Izuku shook his head. Anyways, I will be teaching you modern hero art history. So the lesson began with the hero beginning to explain what they will be learning in the class. After her class was ectoplasm, he taught mathematics. Izuku found it simple and was able to write on the screen of his computer for more detailed equations. Izuku found it enjoyable to learn new things, and this reminded him more of his time with Asato when she gave him tests on the computers. Soon, the class came to an end and there was an audible sigh of relief from some. Ectoplasm gave a huff of amusement as he walked through the doors. Izuku stood up and stretched. His stomach grumbled and he was prepared to run out to his territory for a quick hunt. Kaken derailed his plan for a meal. Izuku, right? What did you want to talk about? The feral boy asked as his tendrils put his stuff away. You have somewhere private? I do. Follow me. He led his old friend to his room. I'll see you guys later. He waved to his friends. Don't die. Shinso shouted back. Should we be worried that he will get into trouble? Jiru asked. Nah, if anything he will end up killing whatever is trying to kill him. Shinso waved them off. Izuku opened the door to his room and welcomed the blonde inside. This is my room. I don't use it other than to keep my stuff and to shower. Kaken looked around and took a seat at his desk. Do you remember from before? He began. Izuku sat on his bed and it sank slightly. Not much, it's foggy. I remember us being friends and our mothers being friends, but that was mostly all of it. Why? Kaken shook his head. Just curious. My mom wants to meet you or more like reunited with you. Will you? Of course. I'd be happy to, but not today. The trial for my mother is today after school. What? We were never told. Kaken looked shocked. Where is it? Do you know? I can find out. Izuku pulled his phone out of his bag and tapped around until he found the phone book. He pressed Nizu's number and called. Izuku, what can I do for you? Nizu asked with his usual chipper attitude. Kaken wants to know where the trial is going to take place. Do you know where it is? Of course. I'll send you the location on your phone. Thanks. He looked at the message and then held it out to the blonde. I don't know how to do stuff like that. Kaken took the proffered phone and forwarded the message to his phone. I put in my phone number. Great. Anything else? Izuku smiled at his friend. No, the main thing was so you could come over and talk with Mom, but now the trial. Kaken dragged his hand through his hair. Izuku's smile fell as he smelled Kaken's mood. You were close with Inko? After you disappeared, she became close with our family. She watched over me and raised me with my mom. Now it's like everything I've known was a lie. He clenched his fists and closed his eyes shut. Izuku didn't know how to respond to that. His mother abandoned him and instead took care of the boy in front of him. He felt that anger flare up again, but not at Kaken, at his mother. She took care of you. That's what mattered, isn't it? Some bitterness leaked through. I'm sorry. I know it isn't fair, but dash. He waved his arms in frustration, trying to find the words. I get it, it isn't fair. It's not your fault. Izuku said softly, yeah. They sat in silence for a moment and then their stomachs grumbled for nourishment. Let's go eat before lunch ends. He offered, right? Breakfast was a bit too small for me. Izuku took off his blazer and shirt. He slipped on a tank top and took off his pants for a pair of shorts. The blonde watched in confusion. What in the hells are you doing? My uniform will get dirty if I go hunt in it, Izuku said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. You are going to go hunt in the woods? Over there? He pointed out the window to his woods. Yep, my den is there. I'll show you sometime if you like. With that, he opened said window and leapt out of it. Then he began to sprint at breakneck speed in search of his prey. The blonde shook his head and walked out of the room to eat his lunch. He called his mother on the way to the cafeteria to tell her about Inko's trial and where it was taking place. She immediately began to prepare and leave work early. Katsuki walked into the cafeteria and found a tray and filled it with something that he'd like. He found where Shinso sat and made to sit with him. "Hey, Kaken," Shinso greeted. "Don't call me that. Forget it, you've known Izuku longest or more recently. Is Yue feeding him? Like giving him money for lunch and shit?" The blonde asked. "Nizu gave him a credit card yesterday when we went out for food after school, so I think he's good." "Why, where is Izuku?" Mina asked with a raised brow. "He ran into the fucking woods to hunt," he said. "He began to eat the food he picked up." Jairu snorted. "Gods. He is so feral, it's incredible. Oh, that's just how he is. Yesterday, he showed me his den and caught 2 big-ass rabbits and cooked them right then and there. This morning, Mina and me ate some badger he probably hunted within the hour. He's been feral for most of his life. That's how he is." Katsuki listened carefully as Shinso explained. "How was the badger?" Shoji asked. "Needed seasoning, but all right," Mina said. "All right? They fucking better be taking care of him," Katsuki said. Lunch hour finished and they made their way to the last class of the day, heroics. Everyone funneled into class and excitedly waited for the next teacher to show up. Everyone was in their seats but Izuku, who was still missing. Shinso waited for his friend to walk through the door, but instead, he heard a tapping from the window. "I swear if I see him dangling from the window when I turn." He turned and saw Izuku's grinning face against the window. With a sigh, he got up and unlocked the window latch. Izuku scrabbled in and fell onto the floor with everyone watching. Made it in time. Izuku got up and smiled as the door swung open. "I am here." All Might strode in with confidence but paused at the scene before him. Then the class cheered at his appearance. "Now onto the lesson at hand. But you'll need these. Meet me at Gamma Gym." With that, he disappeared out the door. Izuku was confused for a moment as he got the scent of Yagi, but it was All Might. Then he remembered he didn't know Yagi's quirk. Yagi had a quirk that turned him into All Might, which made sense to him. "What are these?" He pointed at the briefcases on the wall that everyone was taking. "Hero suits, yours is number 18. Shinso grabbed his own and then Izuku's. "Here and let's go before it were late." They walked into the locker room with everyone changing into colorful clothes and some equipment. Izuku took a corner and opened his briefcases after some struggling. His hero suit was as simple as it could be. It was a skin-tight tank top and shorts, that was it. The back of the tank top had his signature of 3 claw marks painted on in gold with the clothes colored a forest green. Even though he was the last one in the locker room, he was the first one out. He turned to the sign where it said Gym Gamma and followed the arrow. He got the scent of Yagi again and was met with the skinny man behind the corner. Yagi still hadn't heard him approach. "Hey, Yagi." Izuku greeted the man. Yagi, for his part, coughed up blood as usual and turned to see Izuku. His opinion of Izuku was that of a friendly feral animal. In the beginning, the month passed with a few interactions with the boy. He had grown fond of the wild child. But now he saw his secret identity. "Young Izuku, you must not tell anyone about this. If you see me like this, then call me Yagi. See me buffed up, call me All Might. Understood?" Yagi said urgently. Izuku shrugged. "All right." I was confused for a minute when I got the scent of Yagi, but All Might showed. Yagi smiled at the honest boy and ruffled his hair. "Good lad, by the way. For the upcoming exercise, you do know to not hurt anyone permanently or seriously, right?" "I figured." Izuku smiled up at the tall blonde. Yagi huffed in amusement. "Go join your class. I can hear them coming." Izuku nodded and casually walked around as he waited for the rest of his class. Everyone had a myriad of different colors and styles. Izuku observed them all as they chatted between themselves. He joined his group of friends and looked over their costumes. "You look like a copy of Aizawa," he said to Shinso. "He is my favorite hero." "Shut up. You look like some guy on the street." Shinso's ears burned as he tried to throw back the roast. "I think it suits him. Mina said, bounding up to the two. What do you think, Zuko? Looks neat, he said, looking her up and down. Mina pouted again at his non-reaction. All right, you newbies. For today, we are doing indoor battle trials with teams of 2 against 2. One will be playing the villains and defending a bomb, and the heroes will attempt to stop them. Villains win by time running out or capturing both heroes. Heroes win by touching the bomb or capturing both villains. Teams are drawn by lot for more fun. All Might explained to everyone. Izuku looked at the ball with E printed on it. People began to find their partner and Izuku found his. Bro, nice to work with you. Kirishima greeted with a toothy smile. Same here, Izuku said with his smile. First up is E for the villain, and A for the heroes, All Might announced. The rest follow me to the viewing room. Izuku looked at who they were fighting and it was Sato and Hagakure. Izuku shifted his face and small pits opened around his nose. He could see Hagakure easily. It only took one night to figure out how some snake's pit organs worked, and now he had the perfect opportunity to test them. Let the best team win. Kirishima raised his fist to their opponents. Damn straight. Sato raised his fist in response. Izuku raised his fist trying to mimic them. Yeah, yeah. Hagakure raised her gloved fist. Izuku and Kirishima walked up the stairs and found the bomb. Izuku tapped it and felt it was paper. Oh, it's fake. I thought it was real. Kirishima laughed in good nature. All right, so what do you want to do? I'm pretty excited about this. Izuku thought for a moment. Realistically, he could take out both of them, but Kirishima seemed interested in participating. What can you do? Like quirk and stuff. I can harden my skin and I'm a good fighter. He showed by hardening his fists and clanging them together. That's neat. You already saw what I can do, so I can take out Hagakure and let Sato fight you. What do you think? Izuku proposed. Perfect. Let's move a floor down so we have some time if things go bad. Izuku nodded to his recommendation. All right, I'm off. Izuku walked up to a window to see what they were doing. He was just in time to see Hagakure remove her boots and gloves and then split off to the back of the building. Izuku had her scent and followed near above her. Start. The speakers throughout the building said. Hagakure disappeared instead, and Izuku dropped out the window and into a floor above hers. He shifted his hands to claws and made his way to the back stairs. He could hear her faintly downstairs as she made her way closer. Izuku decided to have some fun and climbed up the wall with his claws and prowled on the ceiling of the hallway. He smashed the lights and caused the stairway to go into darkness. Izuku clung to the corner of the wall and ceiling and waited for his prey to come. He was good at waiting. Toru slowly walked down the hallway to the stairs. Their plan was simple. Sato would cause a distraction by going in loud, and she would sneak in and win for the both of them. The only issue was Izuku, a complete wild card. While she didn't think he would hurt her or anyone, he was scary at times. Her thoughts were exemplified by hearing a glass break and the lights upstairs go out. She whimpered ever so softly but moved forward. Without a sound, she climbed up each step in the complete dark. She felt her way up until she found the landing on the second floor. Then she felt something fall on her shoulder from above. It was concrete dust. Then, ever so gently, tape was wrapped around her forehead while a clawed hand held her shoulder. Hagakure Toru is out. All Might shouted. You did good. I barely even heard you and I have very good ears. Izuku encouraged the frozen girl, and then she heard claws scrape and dig into concrete as he disappeared again. At least he is nice. She laughed softly. Izuku arrived back where Kirishima was left to see his teammate and Sato fighting it out. The feral boy decided to sit on the sidelines and observe them fight. He put himself between the stairs to the bomb and the ongoing fight. Kirishima seemed to be having fun as they threw fists back and forth and blocked very few. In a break, Sato took a bag of something white and dumped it in his mouth. He roared and picked up Kirishima before throwing him out a near window. Izuku saw him harden his whole body as he heard a crash 2 floors down. He couldn't worry about that as Sato turned to Izuku and charged. Sato, with his enhanced strength, threw a punch at the smaller boy, but Izuku dodged it swiftly and got behind him. Sato tried to backhand Izuku, but he was already gone. He was hit in the knee and fell. Then a steel hard fist punched his temple and Sato went down. Izuku pounced on the dazed boy and knocked the wind out of him. Quickly, He wrapped the tape around his wrist that was held together by his hand that had split to put them together. Villains win. All Might shouted and Izuku cheered for his first victory. Chapter 10 Court. Izuku went to check on where Kirishima was thrown out the window, but he looked fine as he was dusting himself off. "You okay?" Izuku shouted down at him. Kirishima looked up and gave a thumbs up with a toothy smile. "All good. Nice job taking out Sato too. Thanks. What are you doing with your hand?" Izuku jumped out the window and landed with a loud thump. Kirishima gave a softer smile and explained, "It's a thumbs up, meaning all good or good job or something along those lines. Thumbs down is the opposite." "Ha, neat. Thanks, Kirishima." The two joined up with the other two and made their way to the viewing room. "Man, Izuku, you're scary in there," Hagakure said. "How did you know I was there?" "You were very quiet, but my sense of smell was able to tell your general location. These pits next to my nose were what made me see you." "What are they?" Hagakure squinted to see. "Pit organs like on snakes. They can sense heat very well, and I've improved them some. When I first saw you, I wanted something to actually see you. So I researched after class and got these to work properly." The invisible girl marveled at the boy before her. "That's so cool. What other cool things like that can you do?" "I've got lots of things changed in my body. Bones are reinforced with iron and carbon. Muscles are compressed, ligaments strengthened, and nerves extended." His hand shifted to show the bones on his knuckles and then the densely packed mass in his forearms. "So you completely overhauled your entire body?" Sato asked with disbelief. "Yep, except for my skin, I like how it is. And hair, not much used there." They walked into the room and were greeted by the rest of the class crowding the floor. Some tried to give words of encouragement to the losing team, but Sato brushed them off. "Nah, we didn't stand a chance against Izuku." Hagakure nodded, but no one saw except Izuku. "Yeah, he's super scary when he caught me," Shinso snorted. "He was scary because it was dark and he got the jump on you. When you do see him for real, you'll piss your pants." "I know I did." "Shuku, show us what he is talking about," Mina all but demanded. "All right? No, I want it to be the right time." Shinso stopped his friend from doing anything more than his claws shifting. All Might coughed to get everyone's attention. "Now, who wants to tell me how they did?" For both teams. He motioned for Yairuzo to speak, who raised her hand. "I believe that they all did well in the beginning. While Kayama Izuku is fine." The feral boy interrupted his classmate with a smile. While Izuku was a wild card, it was a good attempt to have Hagakure try to sneak past them and to the objective. Everyone played their part until the very end. Izuku should have assisted his partner with Sato, but instead let them fight, resulting in his counterpart being indisposed if Izuku couldn't handle Sato alone. "I just wanted Kirishima to have a chance to fight is all." Izuku shrugged in defense. "Plus, I stood no chance against him. I don't think I could stand a change even with a pound of sugar in my system." Sato supposed Izuku. "I remember sugar," Izuku said wistfully to himself. Many pairs of eyes snapped at him. Mina giggled excitedly and Shinso made a keening sound, wishing his friend never said anything. "Very good, young Yairuzo. I think that covers it, the MVP of this round." Everyone pointed at Izuku, who was daydreaming of sweets. They moved on to the next match with Kaken on the hero side with Shoji. Koji and Tsuyu were on the villains team. Izuku excitedly watched his old friend use his quirk to see how far he had grown. Shoji scouted them out as Koji did the same with birds. "That guy can control animals?" Izuku asked. "Koji Koda. No, he can speak to them and asks for help," All Might explained. "Huh. How does that work with people who have animal-based quirks?" He was tempted to get the bird-headed teen to experiment or the frog-looking one. "You're weird," Shinso said to his friend, and Izuku made a face back. The match started and Kaken blasted up to the top of the building while Shoji worked his way up. On the inside, Tsuyu and Koji set up a defense in the third-floor room. They didn't last as Kaken found them first, and then Shoji joined as Koji went down. Tsuyu tried to escape with the bomb, but Shoji grappled her and the hero team won. That's how the rest of the day went, with everyone getting a chance to go and play heroes versus villains. Izuku found it very fun to watch everyone try different strategies and combinations with their quirks. Shinso's turn was the funnies for Izuku as Shiro wrapped his friend up but ended up under Shinso's quirk and ordered Shiro to wrap himself up. The two ended up wrapped in tape as Kaminari dumbly walked around while Jairu stood on shaking legs because of the shock Kaminari sent everywhere. The villains won that round and they needed to be helped back to the viewing room since no one was able to stand. Shinso blushed when he was met with Izuku's snort. Everyone got to go and the day ended with All Might disappearing from view after a farewell. Everyone looked around to see where he went, but Izuku pointed in a direction and everyone saw a door finish closing. They animatedly returned to the locker room to change and then head home. "What are you doing after school?" Shinso asked his friend. "MH? Oh, do you remember my mother was arrested for leaving me in the woods? Yeah, her trial is today after school and I'm going." Everyone quieted in the locker room and Shinso slapped him but winced when his hand connected with Izuku's arm. "Why didn't you say anything?" Izuku shrugged. "I didn't think it was a big deal. Is it a big deal? I mean, it's a big deal for me, but..." Shinso sighed and shook his head. "It's complicated. Don't worry about it." Everyone finished changing and funneled out to leave through the gates. Mina and Jairu waited for their friends, but only Shinso and Shoji came out. When they explained why they were shocked, but then understood why Izuku wanted to keep the trail to himself. "Oh, no, Shinso said. He just didn't think it was a big deal to anyone. He didn't care if anyone knew. He just didn't mention it." He corrected their misunderstanding. Mina looked incredulous ahead and then slowly nodded. "You know what? That checks out with him. You think he'll be fine?" Jairu asked Shinso. "I'm not sure, I hope so." He responded, "These clothes suck." Izuku tugged on the collar of the white button-up shirt. Namuri batted his hand away and fixed his collar. "You'll be fine, just don't mess with it. Come on, let's go before we are late." The two walked out of the school and to the parking lot. They took the same car as last time and got moving. The courthouse wasn't anything special, but it was their destination. Heroes were prevalent in the area and police were more so. Izuku looked around as Namuri guided them through the doors and then to a checkpoint. "Please remove any personal objects and step through the scanner," a security guard said to the two of them. Namuri handed him her hero license. He nodded and handed it back to her. "You will still need to go through the security scanner." He pointed at Izuku. "All right, where do I put these?" Izuku shrugged and flesh tore as the communication device Nizu gave him and his key was produced. Namuri gave him a really look as the security guard held a bin and he stepped through the arch. It immediately beeped and the security guard pulled him to the side. He scanned him with a handheld scanner and it rang immediately as well. "Young man, do you have any metal on you?" "Yeah. My whole skeletal structure is near steel." Izuku tilted his head in confusion. "You could have told us and skipped this part," the man said with a raised eyebrow. "Well, you didn't ask." Izuku shrugged defensively. "Izuku, it's so no weapons enter the building," Namuri explained from the other side. "That doesn't make any sense. Some people are weapons. I can make my body a weapon." He tried to understand the logic of it. The security guard huffed and gave his stuff back. The feral boy put his stuff back into his arms and followed Namuri. They walked until she stopped in front of a big set of double doors. She checked her watch and nodded. She opened the door and motioned Izuku to go in, and she followed while closing the door gently. Inside, a few people were sitting on the benches. One caught his eye, Asato. "Asato, it's good to see you again." Izuku greeted her. She approached him and gave him a quick embrace. "You look well. I've missed seeing you at your table." She ruffled his messy top. "How has UA been treating you?" Izuku beamed at the contact. "Good. The forest is smaller there but nice. I've made my den instead of taking one like last time." Asato smiled softly at him and then turned sharply at Namuri. "You've been sleeping in the woods?" Her eyes narrowed slightly at the younger woman before her. "Yeah, it's next time this big tree and pond. I did sleep in my room once, but that was by accident. My room is nice, I guess. I don't have much to compare it to." He shrugged. Namuri wiped the bead of sweat from her forehead as the librarian's eyes softened again and turned back to him. "That's wonderful, dear." People began to file into the courtroom in fancy suits. Namuri and Asato guided Izuku to the seats nearest the front. The judges got prepared for the day and got seated. A few more people walked into the courtroom from where Izuku entered. Many he didn't know, but the last 3 he did. Kaken led the way in a button-up with a man and woman he hadn't seen in over 10 years. Kaken met Izuku's eyes and he pulled his parents to him. Mitsuki spotted him and gasped. Her eyes immediately began to tear and she covered her mouth. Masaru was in a similar state but more reserved. Izuku tentatively got up to meet them. Mitsuki didn't wait much longer and yanked Izuku into a hug. She held him tight as Masaru placed his hand on his shoulder. "You're here. Look at you." She pulled him back and examined his face. "You look just like I remember." She laughed softly with tears running down her face. He didn't get to talk before a gavel hit the block and everyone rose. The Bakugos moved into the seats behind him and the session began. The judges began by bringing out the subject of today. Inko Midnight was walked in by a security guard with quirk suppression cuffs on her. She was lean with long green hair loose around her head. She appeared calm until she met eyes with her son. Her eyes widened when she realized the boy he had left for dead survived. When they told her why she was arrested, she didn't believe Izuku had survived in the wild. So she was calm, sure that whoever they claimed Izuku, he was a fake. But she couldn't refuse that the boy in front of Mitsuki was him. The judges began the trial as they were handed files. One judge read the charges against Inko and the others shuffled through their papers to see the evidence placed forth. Izuku saw their wrinkled faces grow more wrinkled as they read the reports with growing frowns. The final judge finished reading and took off his glasses to rub his eyes. "Let the trial for Inko Midoriya begin. Miss Midoriya, you are guilty of child abandonment and attempted first-degree murder of Izuku Midoriya, your son. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" She was pale, a sweating mess, and didn't say anything. "I believe this case is very clear with the evidence provided and the statement of Izuku by Detective Tsukachi. Do you agree?" The one judge asked the other two. One nodded and the other hesitated. "I wish to hear from both sides before I make my decision." The middle-aged judge decided. The other two gave their nods and motioned to go ahead. "May Izuku Midoriya please come to the stand?" "Just Izuku is fine." He stood and smiled at the 3 judges. He shuffled out of the chairs and walked where the security guard pointed. The oldest of the judges smiled softly at Izuku. "Very well, Izuku. We have read the statement given to us by the good detective. Would you please tell us everything you remember? In detail?" Izuku let out a breath and began his story again. "Well, I was 5, and the last thing my mother said to me was, 'This wouldn't have happened if you have gotten your quirk.' And then she put something over my mouth. I woke up in the middle of the woods, alone." From there, he continued his whole story from having to eat raw fish to killing the wolf when he was around 7. He described the fight and the discovery of his quirk. He continued until he caught up to current events. "And now I'm here, I think that's it." There was a sniffle from the seated area and he could tell it was from Mitsuki. The whole courtroom was dead quiet as they listened attentively to his story. When he finished, there was a pause and then the same old judge spoke. "Thank you, Izuku. You can return to your seat. Miss Midoriya, to the stand." The tone in his voice was different for the last part. Izuku sat down and watched as security clipped her handcuffs to the stand. She stared down at the podium. "Please, tell us your side of the story," the middle-aged judge asked of her. "I had no choice. He was quirkless. It would have ruined my whole life. I've read enough to know what I did was a mercy compared to what he would have to live through." She burst out. Izuku felt anger boil when she spoke. Thankfully, Mitsuki said anything before he did. "You had a choice, but you chose one of the worst ones. How could you?" Tears leaked out and her face was red from anger on his behalf. A gavel hammered down. "The audience will be quiet during this session," one judge said seriously. Mitsuki bowed slightly and sat back down. The 3 turned back to Inko. "Is that all you have to say for yourself?" When there was no response, they continued. "Very well, Inko Midoriya, you are sentenced to serve 40 years with no parole. This court is adjourned." The final gavel stuck and the security guard pulled Inko to the door she entered through. "Mitsuki, Katsuki, I'm sorry," she yelled back at the family with tears. They didn't respond and instead turned their backs on her. That was the last thing she saw as the door closed with finality. Mitsuki sat with her face covered and her elbows on her knees. From hearing Izuku's story from start to finish and hearing her once closest friend admit to everything he had said caused Mitsuki to have a small breakdown. Masaru sat next to her with his arm around his wife. Katsuki had already heard the story once, but the way Inko admitted to it, he didn't know what to think of the woman who helped raise him. Namuri kept an eye on Izuku as he was lost in thought. She had no idea how he would react to all of what happened. "Izuku, are you all right?" She gently placed a hand on his arm. "I feel tired, I think. That is called an emotional drain. Your body is fine, but your mind had had enough for today and is telling you to rest or stop doing what you are doing," Asato explained. Izuku nodded in understanding. Mitsuki wiped her face clean and turned to her nephew. "I wanted to have you over for dinner and get to know you again, but I don't think today is a good day for that." He nodded again. "Yeah, all right." She got up and pulled him into a hug again. She squeezed him, but for Izuku it felt nice. "I'm so happy to see you again." She pulled back and held his face. "I'll have Katsuki tell you when you should come over." After another hug, they began to leave. Masaru put his hand on his shoulder and gave him a warm smile as he passed. Kaken gave him a nod and followed his parents. "Let's get back to UA, huh?" Namuri put an arm around his shoulder and held him. He nodded and the three made their way out. Once they got to the outside, Asato spoke. "Take care of yourself. Come to me if you ever want to talk or even visit." She gave him a hug and a smile. Namuri and Izuku got back to UA with no issues. She tried to talk to him on the way, but it was obvious that he just wanted to rest, so she left him to be with some instrumental music on the radio. "Izuku, if you ever need to talk to someone about what you are feeling, please come to me, or get someone else to talk about it if you like. It's okay to feel angry or sad. All right?" She knelt to look up at him. "I think I'm okay. I felt angry and a little sad, but I just feel like I want to sleep for a while." "Thank you, Namuri." For the first time, he hugged her and she immediately reciprocated. Namuri watched Izuku walk out of his room after changing and heading out to the woods. He walked and slowly began to build up speed until he was sprinting faster than any normal person could. He disappeared into the woods and didn't slow down. Izuku's mind was tired, but his body wasn't, and he needed to burn some excess energy he had. So he went for a hunt and then tried to sleep early. He found a deer and it was speared through its neck and out the bottom. It died quickly and Izuku ate until he was full. He mechanically set the skin to dry after prepping it. The feral boy climbed into his den and lay down. Soon he slipped into sleep and he dreamed of a nicer time. Chapter 11 President. Izuku sat at his desk, waiting for class to begin. He wasn't the first one to be in class. Yairuzo was the first. He gave her a wave when he entered. It wasn't long before more of his classmates started to fill up the classroom. Shinso was one of his first friends to arrive. He sat behind Izuku and poked him. "How are you doing? How'd it go yesterday?" He began. "Now, I feel a bit tired, I guess. Yesterday, Asato said I was emotionally drained after court ended. I got to meet my aunt Mitsuki, so that was nice. Inko was sentenced to 40 years in prison. I'm not sure if that's a lot or not. Like, was it too much or the right amount? Either way, I'm okay with her being gone." "Oh, that's good to hear," Shinso said, not knowing what else to say after that. Thankfully, Mina arrived with a smile with Jairu on her heels. "Morning, Zuku. Shin, you excited for another day?" Izuku returned the smile to her. "I suppose this is still all new to me, so." He shrugged. "Yeah, that makes sense," Jairu added. "Well, if you ever need help, I don't mind giving you some after-school one-on-one tutoring," Mina said to him while leaning forward to him. "Tutoring is when someone helps someone else with school, right?" When Shinso nodded, he turned back to Mina. "Thanks, Mina. I'm all right with schoolwork, but I will ask you about stuff I don't understand. I'd be happy to have one-on-one time with you after school. I can even show you my den if you like." He beamed at his helpful friend. Mina was pouting when her teasing didn't work again, but was now blushing when he finished. "Ah, sure," Jairu snickered behind her. "What's wrong, Mina? Something backfires? You okay, Mina? Your face is dark purple." He asked worriedly. It's fine," She waved his concerns away. He turned to Shinso, who was smiling just as much as Jairu was. I feel like I'm missing something. Is this what Nem was talking about, girls being weird? Jairu snorted loudly and covered her mouth with her hands, and then her face turned red from being the center of attention for the moment. Even if Izuku didn't keep his voice down, she would have been able to hear them easily. Shinso, on the other hand, made a thinking pose and stared at his first friend in a while. Mina missed it all since she was still trying to recover from before. Shinso had had his suspicions since they went out to eat, but now he had to ask. Izuku, has anyone given you the talk? About guys and girls? Oh, Nem did. Last month. Why? Izuku tilted his head as to why his friend was bringing that up. To your seats. Aizawa walked through the door just as Shinso was beginning to speak again. Shoji had arrived a minute before Aizawa and was trying to understand what had happened in his group of friends. We have a few things to go over yesterday's trials. Everyone did well, Shinso. His eyes landed on the purple-haired boy who was trying to get his mind back on track from Izuku's statement that Midnight had given him the talk. Work on how the details of your command when you use your quirk. Yes, sir. Aizawa continued to tell some what they did wrong and improve. Now, you all will have to decide on your class president. Do it however you like. He went to lie down and take a nap. The class erupted in arguments, but Izuku turned around to Shinso to ask. His friend already predicted the question and spoke before he did. It's like the president is in charge after any teacher is. Make sure we are all present for an assembly, that sort of stuff. Izuku gave him a grateful smile. We shall put it to a vote. Ida declared, and they began to hand out paper to write a name. Izuku had no idea who to vote for and didn't truly care for the position. So for fun, he wrote his name in chicken scratch handwriting. He put his vote in Ida's hand as he passed back around to collect. He and Yairuzo tallied the votes per name on the whiteboard, and his name was written with one vote. Izuku huffed a laugh, and then another vote was placed by his name, and then another. He heard and saw Mina cover her mouth to stifle a laugh as she saw what he was looking at. All right. Izuku is the president and Yairuzo is the vice president. Ida said hesitantly. Who the hell voted for the feral boy in our class? Who, might I add, just asked me what class president was not 5 minutes ago. Shinso said to everyone. Mina burst out laughing and a few chuckles were scattered around. Yairuzo motioned Izuku to stand beside her and he heard her whisper. Give a speech. He got what a speech was by context clues. I will beat any other class president in combat. I promise you all. I will protect you. I don't know what the duties of the president are. He waved his hand at the board. Mina laughed even harder and most of the class began to get infectious giggles. Shinso dropped his head on his desk and had given up. Jairu gave him a thumbs up for encouragement. Shoji just gave him a shrug when Izuku looked at him for help. Feral president. A cheer went up starting with Kaminari. It spread quickly and it caused Aizawa to wake and rise like the living dead. He looked at the board and then at the rest of the class. Izuku is class president until the end of the year or for special circumstances. He drove the final nail into the coffin for everyone. Sit down, the class is beginning soon. He gestured for the two to sit down. Izuku sat as Kaken sent him an amused look and Shinso Mock glared at him. You voted for yourself, didn't you? I didn't think I was going to get the position. He whispered, yelled back to his friend. The door opened and Cementos walked in with a calm smile. The day progressed like normal until lunch came and everyone got up to leave. Izuku stretched and his back cracked multiple times. Anyone in hearing range cringed at the sound, but Izuku didn't notice. He began to head to the door and Shinso followed. Mina, Jairu, and Shoji joined them and began to make their way to the cafeteria. I'll see you guys later. Izuku was about to split off to hunt, but an arm hooked around his and pulled him back. Nah, you're coming with us to eat. Mina struggled to pull him along due to his compact weight. Yeah, it'll do you good. Jairu agreed. Izuku shrugged and went along with his friends. All right, do they have sandwiches? I still don't know how to use utensils. Mina laughed in remembrance of the first day. Don't worry, I'll teach you how to use the eating sticks. She skipped along. All right, let's go. Izuku agreed with the pink girl and the other three gave each other significant looks. Jairu pulled the other two back and whispered, Does Izuku know Mina is trying to tease him and doesn't care, or does he not know? I believe he doesn't know or understand what she is trying to do, Shoji whispered back. He doesn't. He said that Midnight gave him the talk just last month. I was one of the first people to talk to him after years alone in the woods. He doesn't understand anything to do with the opposite sex other than what goes on with them. It's all completely new to him, Shinso explained with a sigh. While he does enjoy having Izuku as a friend, it does cause drama like this. He is beginning to like it as well. Oh, that's some funny stuff right there. Jairu smiled. I want to see how far Mina is willing to go until she finds out what we did. They lined up at the lunch line and Izuku copied Mina, who was in front of him. She ordered something he didn't know and then it was his turn. Izuku, nice to see you. What would you like? Lunch Rush asked. They have met in passing and he knows of his past, but that was it. Can I have something that doesn't require utensils to eat? Some people shot him curious looks, but Izuku never noticed. Of course, boyo. A foot-long sandwich filled with everything needed for a daily diet. When he set it on his tray, it weighed at least 2 pounds. There we are, enjoy. Izuku's mouth watered some just at the odor of the meal before him. He grabbed water to drink and followed Mina to a table. He looked skeptically at the chairs but tried to sit. Creaked ever so slightly but held. What in God's name is that? Jairu asked at the biggest sandwich she had seen. Izuku's hand split and he sliced it in half and picked it up to eat. He chewed slowly and savored every inch. It's good, he said around a mouthful. So, class president, what is your first decree in office? Mina joked. I can make decrees? He asked. No, you just make sure the class doesn't have any issues that you could fix for the teacher, or just make sure the class is in order. Shinso shot whatever was brewing in his head. A problem solver? I can do that. He nodded as tendrils extended with eyes and scanned the lunchroom for problems. Izuku, may I ask for advice on non-human body parts one could mimic like yourself? Shoji asked. All the tendrils turned with a flash towards Shoji and his eyes sparkled. Of course. What do you want to know? The first thing I was to compact my whole musculature system and continuously added muscles every day. The simple and all you need to do is eat enough to do so. Although, Izuku hummed in thought. What is it? Shoji asked. I was thinking if you could eat whatever and convert what you need to the right things. I can do that because I can tell my body to do what I want. Convert fat cells to protein or whatever I need at the time. It does take energy, but that's why I eat so much. He rattled off. The other three listened to their conversation as they ate. I can only control my arms. I will need to eat the proper things if I wish to attempt what you speak of. For now, can you show me how to do something small? All right, can you expose your bones? Izuku showed by example and held his hand out. Flesh pulled back and his knuckles were exposed. Suku. We are eating, Mina complained. He tilted his head in confusion. I can see that. Before Mina could say anything, an alarm blared and Jairu cried in pain. Izuku did the same, but he could shift his ears. Everything got muted and he leaped to his feet to fight. He scanned the whole area in a second and decided on helping the closest person he could. Bone spears were thrown at Mach speed and accurately destroyed the alarms that caused his friend pain. 7 alarms were destroyed in a few seconds. The panic in the crowd wasn't calming much as everyone tried to leave through one double door. He could see people getting pushed around and some knocked down. The flesh on his arms tore and moved with his bone as they extended and he moved. He leapt to the wall and dug his claws into the surface. He leapt from one wall to another with blinding speed until he was above the exit. Enough! His voice shifted halfway and everyone froze as Izuku hung over them. His voice shifted back to normal as he had everyone's attention. Leave without hurting anyone. Now go. He's right. We should be rational about this and leave in an orderly manner. Ida chopped. Someone pointed out the window and said, It's only the media. Yes, it's only the media, whoever that is. Izuku trailed off and he sniffed the air again. His head whipped in a direction and he crawled upside down through the doors and began to track the scent. Everyone watched him curiously and he ran off. He arrived at a door and swung it open. No one was in there and he cautiously stepped into the teacher's lounge where he had been numerous times before. He could smell someone unfamiliar in the room and then vanished. The scent was stronger in one area around a desk. It smelled of blood and ash. His arm vibrated and he pulled out the communication device Nizu gave him. Izuku, is everything all right? Nizu had seen what happened in the cafeteria and followed the boy through the cameras to where he is now. I picked up the scent of someone unfamiliar to me in the teacher lounge. The strong around one desk and then it's gone. It smells of blood, ash, and something else. Izuku explained. His tendrils were out and scanning everything around him just in case. Nizu paused and then spoke. No one was in the room? Empty. I'll have Namuri come to you. Good job calming the students in the cafeteria. With that, the device shut off. Izuku felt warm inside at the praise. Namuri jogged into the room and greeted Izuku. Is this the desk? She asked when she stood next to him. He nodded. She sifted through it but didn't know what they were looking for. It's All Might's desk. We'll have him check to see if anything is missing. She patted Izuku's head warmly. Nice job finding out about this. Izuku beamed up at her and remembered. Oh, ma'am. When you said girls are weird, does that include them getting red in the face or purple in this case? He tilted his head in question. Midnight smiled widely at that. Purple, you say? Ashido? Ooh. She pulled Izuku to sit down on the sofa. People can get red in the face or purple in her case when they get embarrassed, flustered, or angry. What happened? She tried to pry the tea out of him with complete success. She wanted to help with stuff I didn't understand and said to have one-on-one time together after school. When I said that I could show her my den, she got purple-faced. Could I have gotten her angry? He worried. She chucked softly. Tell me this, what did she do after? That will help you understand better. Did she turn around and stomp off? Did she hide her face? Or did she begin to stutter and stumble her words? Oh, she hid her face. What is that? Embarrassed, then. Don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong. It happened to some when they interpret things in a certain way. I understand, I think. He shrugged. Thanks for the help. He got up to leave. Come to me any time for this kind of help, she called after him. Izuku swung back to the cafeteria and reclaimed the javelin he threw. Then he arrived back at Class 1A and they were chatting among themselves until he walked in. Many shouted his name and began to talk all at once. He nodded along at the mess of words until they stopped. I understood none of that. Mina barked out a laugh. That was seriously cool. You were super fast. Can you do the voice thing again? Destruction of school property is against the rules. Ida chopped his arms. Izuku shrugged at him. Things can get fixed. She was hurting because of the sound. He gestured to Jairu. Thanks for that, by the way, she said gratefully. Aizawa walked in at that time and everyone quieted down. Classes are cut short by the intruders. Go home or whatever. He waved at them and left. Noise. Short day, Kaminari said and packed his bag. Everyone followed suit. Mina walked up to them since they sit closer together. Zuku, you said you would show us your den? Can you? Of course. Izuku happily agreed. I'm down. Jairu shrugged and Shoji gave a nod of agreement. Shinso didn't have to say anything and followed his friends. Izuku led them to his room for a change and headed out the door to the woods. Mina, being the most nosy, peeked into his room, but it was very bare bones. They walked and talked to the tree line. Right? Why did you run off after calming everyone down? Mina asked. Izuku explained the odor he caught and then how he told Nizu about it. It was weird. It was there, then it was gone the next moment. That is concerning. I am sure the faculty will take care of it, Shoji said, and the rest agreed. They walked for a bit longer, following Izuku until they walked into a clearing with a large pond in the middle with a large tree to the other side. 3 claw marks were carved out on the tree. The 3 were in awe at the peaceful area. Where is your den? Mina asked in curiosity. Izuku led them to the tree and picked up his door. Here it is. Want to see inside? Mina looked apprehensively at the dimly lit hole in the ground. Kyo, you first. She nudged the thinner girl. Big baby. Jairu shot back and leaned in. There's a route you can use for a handhold, Shinso called out as he sat down on a log to do some homework. Thanks. She slipped in and Mina peered inside with little success. Ah, Izuku? Yep. Why do you have a wall of animal skulls? She didn't sound scared but casual about it. "Oh, let me show you." Izuku dove into his den without any issues. Jairu was looking at them with interest. He grabbed one and brought it to the entrance for Mina and Shoji to see it as well. "This is the wolf that tried to kill me. You can see where I stabbed its eye here." He showed the cracked eye socket. Mina picked it up gingerly and examined it with Shoji. "It's a trophy," she realized. "Yes, most are. Others are just days to remember." He grabbed a perfectly preserved badger skull. "This was Shinso's first meal with me." Jairu held it and smiled softly at the implications. This was his way to take pictures or something similar. She looked at the robot heads from the entrance exam as her theory was proven correct. "What about this one?" She picked up the deer skull with a large set of antlers. "That one just looked nice." He smiled. They nodded their agreement and Mina slipped down into the den to see how her friend liked to sleep. She padded over to the furs and sat down. Izuku beamed at them and crawled up the hole. Shoji peeked in without having to crawl inside. "Pretty bold of you to sit down on a boy's bed." Jairu smirked at Mina trying the furs. She blushed and sat up. "It looked comfortable and I wanted to try it. It is pretty nice and warm." She ran her hand through the stack of furs. Jairu continued to look at Izuku's trophies and picked up a makeshift obsidian knife. The hilt was wrapped up in old clothes that were worn out. She could see it was a shirt that was used as a handle. Jairu sniffed and wiped a tear at the thought of a child having to survive as Izuku did. Mina came over and saw what she was holding and why she was crying slightly. She gently grabbed it from her hands and looked at the tool that saved Izuku's life. Mina could make out the shape of the child-sized shirt wrapped around the end. "I hope she rots in prison," Mina said softly. "Me too," Jairu agreed. She caught the odor of something and sniffed again. "Is that meat?" They peeked out of the den to see Izuku roasting multiple legs of deer for everyone. Shoji helped by rotating 2 legs. 2 racks of ribs surrounded the opposite side of the fire. Izuku saw them emerge and gave them a beaming smile and motioned them to 2 freshly cut logs for them to sit. Mina sat down next to him and bumped shoulders playfully with him and helped him turn 1 leg of deer. Jairu saw the freshly cleaned deer skull to the side of the tree and smiled at what that meant. They chatted as they cooked the meal Izuku caught for them. They laughed and enjoyed their time in each other's company. Only Shinso grumbled about the lack of seasoning. Chapter 12 USJ. Everyone grouped up in front of the bus and waited for Aizawa to show up. The day's classes passed by without anything of note, and now it was their hero class with rescue being the subject of the day. Shinso tapped Izuku's arm for attention. "This is where the class president makes sure all of his class is here for the teacher," he whispered to his friend. "Oh." Izuku makes his way around everyone in a flash and has many curious looks as he counts every head there. "How many of us are in the class?" He counted 19. "There's 20 in our class," Shinso said. "No one is left behind then." Izuku beamed. Mina giggled at his attitude. "See, I knew I voted right. Line up in 2 rows in the order of your student number." Ida blew a whistle. "What's he doing?" Izuku asked his group of friends. "Your job, I think?" Jairu snorted. "Oh, thanks for doing my job, Ida." Izuku didn't know his word was passive-aggressive as Ida blushed slightly and walked back to the group. Why he'd stop? Before his friends could explain, Aizawa walked up to the bus and opened the door. "Come on, get on." Once everyone boarded, Izuku sat between Jairu and Mina. Shoji was in the back with Shinso, who was nodding off. Everyone chatted between themselves until Tsuyu asked Izuku something that caught everyone's curiosity. "Izuku, may I ask why your quirk affects me and Tokoyami like it did?" Even though your quirk isn't animalistic, she didn't look directly at his face but at his chest. "Yeah, I've seen some others in the cafeteria with animal quirks sit far away from you," Kirishima noted. Izuku hummed in thought. "I don't know, what does it feel like?" He looked at both Tokoyami and Tsuyu. "An eldritch being is watching me closely to see if I take a wrong step. If I did, then my light would be snuffed out." Tokoyami waxed poetry. Izuku stared at him, and Tokoyami began to get uncomfortable. "I understood the words, but not the meaning." He turned to the frog girl. She gave out a rib-bit of laughter and said, "It was like a predator had their teeth around my neck, and if I moved wrong, I would be dead." You are not the first to make me feel like this. I have a friend with a snake quirk, but I have gotten used to her presence. You are different and you don't even have an animal-based quirk. I have no idea. I copy some things from animals. He wiggled his paws on his legs for emphasis. But I've never done anything with pheromones since I had no use for them. He shrugged. Shinso snorted and jabbed. You've been raised by wolves for too long, he said to Izuku. Izuku furrowed his brow. They didn't raise me. They tried to eat me. I thought you knew that. Mina covered her mouth in a laugh, and Jairu smirked. He might have a point. Too wild for too long, and you get the presence of a predator. Jairu agreed. I agree with what Jairu said, but I want to go back a bit. Kaminari raised his hands to pause. Izuku, do you know the meaning of being raised by wolves? As a saying, he paused and thought about it. It means you have wolf parents? He guessed. He's been in the wild for 10-odd years. Of course, he wouldn't know idioms. Jairu defended his friend. Kaminari rubbed his hands and smiled in glee. I have so much to teach you. Kaken slapped the back of his head. Don't teach Izuku weird shit. Kaken, you shouldn't say bad words. Kaken looked put upon as the rest of the class found out Izuku didn't know curse words either. Before anyone could begin to teach Izuku anything that would cause Nemuri to go on a crusade, they arrived. A big dome structure was in front of them with big letters saying USJ. United States Japan? Izuku tilted his head. Universal Studio Japan. Kaminari said right after. There was laughter from a hero waiting for them to arrive. Welcome to the USJ. 13 greeted everyone, unloading off the bus. Hey 13. Izuku waved. She passed by him to talk to Aizawa and patted his head with her gloved hand. Hey there, Izuku. I'm happy to have you here. Her eyes on her helmet crinkled with a smile. Izuku could hear what they were talking about. It was nice to know that All Might couldn't be All Might all the time. 13 came back to the front of the class and began to speak about learning to use their quirks to save people. They walked in, and Izuku saw the interior of the USJ. He was front and center to admire everything around him, from the giant domed ceiling to the different zones. He even saw a wooden area and got excited. Shame he couldn't smell any prey. He was distracted by the lights of the USJ flickering and then going out. Then he sniffed the air and whipped his head to the center of the plaza. The same smell as yesterday is here. Just as a purple mist appeared and a man with hands on his body emerged. Get back! Aizawa yelled and pulled his goggles on. Kaminari, call the main building. Evacuate the USJ now. Are those villains? Izuku asked. Yes, and we are leaving. Shinso tried to drag Izuku back but watched as Aizawa leapt off the stairs and to the mob of intruders. Shouldn't we help? Izuku followed his friend, pulling his arm. It's too dangerous. I must get you all to safety. 13 yelled back, and then the purple mist appeared in front of them, blocking the exit. Apologies, we are the League of Villains. We are here for dash. He was cut off as a bone javelin almost impaled his neck brace. Instead, he was able to move slightly enough for it to punch through the edge of it. The javelin punched into the wall behind. The villain felt blood trickle down his neck in drops. He didn't have any time to see who threw it as Izuku was right behind the javelin as he threw it. He tried to reach out and grab the villain, but he was just out of his range. His arms and legs already shifted as he clung to the wall next to the javelin, and then he yanked the weapon out and leaped at the villain but was transported somewhere else as a portal opened in front of the villain. There were many cries for Izuku's name, but he was gone. What did you do to him? 13 yelled. You should all be more worried about yourself. Now suffer. Purple mist ejected out of the villain, and students began to disappear into it. Izuku landed hard on the concrete with his javelin sunk halfway down into the ground. He whipped his head around and saw he was somewhere else. Alone. He noticed the many villains crowding around Izuku with smirks. He stood up with his usual smile gone and smelled the air. He was still inside the USJ, but his classmates had been scattered just like he was. He could smell anger, blood, and fear. Looks like we only got one. How boring, we'll try to make it last. One villain laughed, and the rest followed in his stead. Only one didn't laugh and backed away. What's wrong with you? His companion asked. The man with the wolf's appearance kept his head down and backed away. He whimpered and whined as they heard flesh tearing and bones breaking. Everyone turned their attention back to the boy, and a beast stood in its place. His arms grew enough for him to use them to run on all fours with claws at the ends of his fingers, and his knuckles exposed the silver metal underneath. His paws grew thicker, and his claws extended. The back of his clothes opened, and a long bony tail extended with a sharp blade at the end. His face shifted, lips were pulled back, and teeth grew sharp and interlocked. Bone plating grew to cover his nose and around his eyes. Another set of eyes opened under his normal eyes, and they swiveled around to take everyone in. Many of the villains stepped back in horror at what they witnessed, but what drove the point home was the voice. 10 different voices layered over each other as the no longer boy spoke. Heroes take out villains. I am learning to be a hero, and you are villains. Izuku was the first to attack. They tried to fight back, but Izuku was too fast. The first to go down was a man with nondescript features. His eyes widened as he tried to light his hands on fire, but his face was already enveloped by Izuku's hands. He was lifted and smashed down and then thrown at his next victim. The next one was knocked down, and Izuku backhanded him as he flew over them to the next one. His tail lashed out and grabbed a man by the leg and was used to hit another with bone-breaking force. Screams of terror filled the area as Izuku took one after another villain down. The last one standing was a man with a wolf head and fur around his body. Izuku silently prowled up to the shivering villain. He could smell the absolute fear radiating off of him. The man didn't speak as he kept his eyes clenched shut and his head down. Izuku put a clawed hand on his shoulder, and the man whimpered. He was pushed down gently, and the wolf man sat down without resistance. When he finally opened his eyes, all he saw were bodies around him. He did not move until someone told him to. Izuku ran out of the area he was in with multiple abandoned buildings scattered around him. He didn't smell anyone else in the area and decided to leave to find his friends. He sped up when he smelled blood from the exit of the area he was in. Izuku extended a tendril with an eye and then opened the door to see what was happening outside. Izuku wasn't sure if it was good or not. After all, this is the first time he is seeing a hero fighting villains. Aizawa was pinned under a large villain with dead eyes and an exposed brain. He could see the villain who transported him away next to the villain with hands around his body. Izuku could see Mina, Shinso, and Todoroki at the edge of the water, watching like he was. Behind them was the boat frozen, and so was the water making a path near the shore. He slammed the door open and sprinted as fast as he could when the hand villain rushed to his friends. Todoroki launched an ice attack and the big villain shielded the other one. The big one slammed his hand on the ice and it shattered with no effort. Mina was being pulled back by a pale Shinso and Todoroki tried to freeze the monster more, but it wasn't enough. Izuku leapt with all his might at the big villain and speared his tail through its chest while clawing at its neck and shoulders. Blood sprayed everywhere as the villain thrashed to grab whatever was on his back. Finally, the villain grabbed Izuku's arm and was thrown off it. Izuku rolled to a stop and his broken arm from where he was grabbed shifted and repaired itself. "Oh, you look scary. Is this the one who hurt you, Kurogiri?" "I believe so." Izuku ignored them in favor to watch the large villain with a shredded back and neck healed. The hole in its chest closed and all that was left was its blood. Izuku paced around the villain to watch how it reacts, but it showed nothing. "What do you like, my Nomu? Wanna play some more?" "Nomu." Izuku dodged the fist that embedded itself in the ground where he was just at. He didn't stop moving around the Nomu until he was able to slice its hand off with his tail. It didn't react for a moment. The hand grew back and it turned to Izuku and screeched. Izuku yelled back and charged. He ran under the fist that should have taken his head off and under its legs. He sliced one off at the knee and cut the Achilles tendon on the other. It collapsed under the missing leg and Izuku began to claw its back out again. Its leg healed, and the Nomu rolled to its feet and grabbed the tail that was whipping around and slicing at the Nomu where it could. He was pulled off its back, but Izuku held on and tore away chunks of flesh and he was slammed down. The Nomu was about to stomp his prone form when an explosion knocked the Nomu to the side. Kaken blasted it over and over until Izuku was able to get on his feet. Izuku watched the Nomu try to swat Kaken down with a completely healed body. Izuku growled in frustration and racked his head for a plan. He tried to take its head off, but it heals faster around his neck than anywhere else. He stared at his claws and made them shift into thicker drill tips. Izuku prowled around the Nomu as he tried to fight Kaken, but it was clear the Nomu had no damage to its body. That's where Izuku's experiment will come in. The Nomu turned its back to Izuku and he pounced. Instead of slashing, Izuku stabbed his 5 fingers deep into the Nomu's neck. He was backhanded away and his fingers detached and dug deeper into the flesh of the Nomu. They wriggled around and began to sink deep into the neck. The Nomu clawed at its neck, but the parasites Izuku created were already doing their job. The monster clawed its neck and chunks of flesh were torn out, but its quirk worked against it and healed faster than it could reach the burrowing creatures Izuku injected. First, the Nomu's arm began to spasm, and then it collapsed to one knee as he couldn't move it anymore. It fell and spasm racked its body. It screeched in pain and Izuku prowled around his prey. Kaken watched the Nomu fail to get up again and fall to the ground face up. He was confused and slightly horrified at what his old friend did and how he looks. Izuku walked up to the prone Nomu and observed it. He spotted its knees and took hold of one of its knee braces. He ripped it off and stared at his new trophy. Blood dripped from where it was attached to its flesh, but Izuku didn't care. He turned to the 2 remaining villains as he had a tendril hold on to his prize. He began to prowl on all 4s around the 2 as the doors banged open at the top of the stairs and All Might was there. Izuku made another javelin and threw it at the Kurogiri to stop him from getting away, but a portal opened between them and the javelin punched through Izuku's stomach instead. He yelled in pain and began to absorb the javelin without pulling it out. He turned back to the 2 and they were already gone. Kaken ran up to Izuku to make sure he was alright. Fuck! He cursed once he saw Izuku was as healthy as he could be. He slapped the back of Izuku's head. Don't make me worry like that, damn it. He huffed out and held his hand where he slapped Izuku. I'm fine. See. Izuku modified voice spooked Kaken, but he checked over his friend. He nodded and pointed at the prone Nomu. What in the hell did you do to that thing? I would like to know as well. All Might approached the 2 as more heroes poured in and pulled students out of the USJ. Is it dead? Izuku shifted back to normal and was about to speak when Nemuri brought him into a crushing hug. Izuku, are you alright? She pulled him out of her bosom and looked him over. I'm alright, Nem. He beamed up at her as she pulled him into another hug. Good, that's good to hear. She pulled back and was called over by Present Mike. I'll see you later, okay? And then she ran off. All Might cleared his throat and motioned to the Nomu. Right? Well, since parasites can't live in me without being eaten like anything else, I decided to research how they worked and I guess I succeeded. He shrugged and one tendril stabbed the prone Nomu and the wound healed. Yep, I succeeded. The damn thing didn't stop healing and you did what? Paralyzed it with parasites? Kaken asked with a shiver. Yep, I had the parasites spread through the nervous system and shut it down. I figured since this thing can't die. He shrugged. You keep saying thing, why? All Might asked the 2 of them. It smells weird, like almost dead but not exactly. Also, it never said anything other than screeching, even now. His tendril stabbed it again and All Might gave him a reproachful look. Stop stabbing the fucking thing. Kaken punched Izuku's arm and winced in pain. The fuck is wrong with your arm? Izuku's arm opened and exposed muscles and bone. It's fine, see? Alright, go on and get checked out by the medics. All Might sighed and waved them away. Izuku and Kaken made their way up the stairs and out of the smashed-in doors. There were paramedics and police in the immediate area. Izuku was thinking if this was a normal amount of police and others, but was knocked out of his thoughts by a pink girl latching around him. Izuku, you're all right, she sobbed. She was a bit dirty from the day's events, but didn't have any major injuries. Izuku hugged her back and beamed a smile. Yep, I can heal myself pretty well. You okay? Kaken gave Izuku a look he couldn't read and headed off. He'll talk to him later. Shinso, Jairu, and Shoji crowded around Izuku and a still-clinging Mina. You all look okay. What about everyone else? The teachers. They took Aizawa and 13 to the hospital for healing, but the rest of us are alright. Bumps and bruises were the worst. Are you okay? I watched most of that fight and it wasn't pretty. Shinso looked worriedly at his friend. Yep, It was hard, but I won. Izuku showed off his new prize. Yeah, we saw. Is that what he looked like when you saw him? Jairu asked Shinso. The tale was new, but yes. That was what I saw in the dark woods one day, and now he is my friend. Izuku beamed at Shinso's words. Izuku, what did you do to the Nomu? Shoji spoke. I made parasites that burrow into its neck and find the nervous system to shut it down. It was really hard to research what I was looking for, but it worked out great. They were all silent for a moment, and then Shinso said, That is horrifying. He said in a steady voice, Come on. Let's get you checked out by the medics. Mina tugged Izuku along after she wiped her tears away. His classmates greeted him and were glad he was healthy as he passed near them. Izuku was likewise relieved that they were healthy. Izuku saw the detective from before and waved at him with a smile. He gave Izuku a wry smile with a nod and kept working. Izuku sat on the bumper of an ambulance and they began to check him over. He lost interest soon after and watched as villains were filed out with UA staff watching like a hawk. He saw the wolf man who didn't fight back and Izuku stared at him as he walked by. The man stiffened up and hunched his shoulders as he passes by. Once done, Izuku boarded the bus again and they made their way back to the main campus for a quick interview and they can head home. Izuku looked around and saw most people were tired. Was that normal? Izuku asked no one in particular and nodded to the USJ now in the distance. No, I think this was the first time someone organized and attacked UA like this, Jairu said. Many nodded their agreement that this was abnormal. And that Nomu was new? Never hear of one before. Shinso shook his head. Izuku. Kaken drew his attention and asked, What the fuck is that? He pointed at the metal kneecap of the Nomu. Izuku pulled it over to his hand and showed it off proudly. My trophy. You should not take objects that belong to the villains. It could prove useful for the heroes to find out where they came from. Ida chopped his arm down. It had another. This one is mine, he said seriously and brought the metal frame to his chest. Leave him be, he lives here anyways. If the heroes want to see it, then they will ask him for it. Jairu defended Izuku's actions. Still, he should not have taken it. All right, take it from him, Shinso said. What? Ida stopped and then looked to Izuku, whose tendrils were beginning to extend from his shoulders, and waved lazily. He remembered seeing his fight against the Nomu and sat back down. It had another, correct. His classmates split off and got changed and then returned to the classroom for the interview. Izuku's turn came and he explained to the detective what he knew and what happened to him after throwing the javelin at Kurogiri. He didn't offer much since he was distracted by the fight against the Nomu. He went on to explain what he did to the Nomu. These parasites, are they lethal? Does it matter? Izuku tilted his head in confusion. The Nomu can't die, I've tried, and it can heal very fast. The detective nodded as he wrote what he said. Can you remove them? I think so, but then wouldn't it try to fight again? Then what? I'll bring it up to the others, that's all I have for you. Thank you for being cooperative. He bowed slightly at Izuku. Izuku beamed and gave a wave while heading to the exit. Nice to see you again. He left and made his way to his woods. He was hungry and maybe a nap will do him good. Plus, he had a trophy to clean up. Good thing he didn't have homework that night. Chapter 13. Rest. Izuku returned to his den after he changed out of his school uniform. He cleaned his trophy and placed it neatly next to the wolf's skull. He grinned at his display, and his stomach grumbled for food. He had used his quirk a lot that day and healed more than usual. So he went on a hunt for his meal. Izuku was in his furs asleep when he heard a phone ringing. He shot to full alert and remembered that he had a phone and it was ringing. He extended a tendril and picked it up to see Mina was calling him. He looked outside, and it was still dark. With some confusion and worry, he poked the green button. Her face showed up on his screen, and it looked like she had been crying. Mina? Are you hurt? Hold on. I can track your scent. Izuku's second set of eyes opened, and bone cracked and flesh tore as he prepared to sprint. No, I'm fine. I just had a nightmare. I wanted to talk to someone. Mina almost jumped out of her sheets in a panic. Izuku paused, and his body shifted again. Oh, okay. Was it because of the USJ? He sat down on his furs. Yeah, it was about when you jumped on that thing. You were too late. and I died with Shinso and Todoroki. More tears cropped up from her black and golden eyes as she tried to rub them away. Izuku was quiet for a moment. Is there something I can do to help? He wasn't sure what to do, so he asked for clarification like Nem taught him. She wiped her face again and said, "Do you have nightmares?" "I did when I was younger. I remember them faintly about me being alone, reliving Inko leaving me, or starving away while wolves found me. I don't anymore. I don't dream about anything." He looked into the distance, distracted. "Do you want to talk about Inko?" Izuku tilted his head in confusion. "We are talking about her?" Mina giggled at seeing Izuku act like a puppy. "No. I mean, do you want to talk about your feelings about her?" Izuku was quiet for a moment in thought. "When I first thought about her seriously again, it was with Kaken. He said Inko was like a second mother to him, and I felt so angry at hearing that. Not at him. It wasn't his fault. It was Inko's." Izuku growled the name. "She left me to die and took care of my friend instead. I wanted what Kaken had, but I didn't. I was alone and fought to live because of her. When I first saw her at court, the same anger came, but it was mixed with sadness. I'm not sure why I felt sad." Izuku felt wet on his face and felt his face with his hand. Tears. He stared at his hand and began to wipe them away like Mina did a minute ago. He remembered he was talking to her about all this and looked at the screen to see her crying again. "It's okay, Izuku. You are not alone anymore. You have Shinso, Namuri, and me. Okay?" She gave him a wobbly smile. Izuku gave her a grateful smile. "Thanks, Mina." He paused and thought of what to say next. What do you like to do when you have free time?" he asked. Mina giggled and wiped the remaining tears. She went on to tell Izuku about dancing and how she likes a game in an arcade that is about dancing. He asked about the arcade, and she explained it to him while laying down to continue taking. Izuku got comfortable in his furs and listened to her talk. But by bit, Mina began to take longer pauses and then stopped talking. Soft snoring was the only thing he heard through her end. Izuku stared awkwardly at his phone with a video call of a sleeping classmate. He wasn't sure what to do at this point and considered waking her up, but Mina looked content to sleep. Izuku fumbled around, and the screen flashed. He froze and tried to figure out what he had just done. Then he continued to try to end the call and finally did. The screen said, "Call ended," and he nodded in satisfaction. "I'm a pro," he said and then laughed to himself. He tossed the phone back on his shelf and rolled over to sleep again, happy to be able to help his friend fall asleep. The next day, he arose at the break of dawn like always. He found a small meal and was called by Nem on his phone to come to the main building to talk. He shoved the rest of the badger in his mouth and swallowed it whole as his body tore it into smaller pieces to digest them quicker. He ran to the door, and Nem was waiting there with a smile. "Hey, Nem!" Izuku smiled up at her. She brought him into a hug and looked down at him. "I'm glad you're okay. I'm sorry I didn't get to check up on you after yesterday." "It's okay. Were you busy?" "It's a mess. This was the first time anyone has attacked UA, and people expect us to be a safe learning environment for their children. When something like the USJ happens, they lose trust and it looks bad on UA." She explained as she motioned to the door and walked through with him. Izuku hummed. "That makes sense. What did you want to talk about?" She smiled down at him again. "Mainly to see how you were after yesterday. You're not scared at seeing your first real fight." She knew he had experience with surviving in the wild, but this was a bit different. "I kinda liked the fighting. It was exciting, but I was more worried about everyone else. I was fine on my own." Nem laughed at that. "You are becoming a battle junkie. Is that good?" "It sounds good." She ruffled his messy hair and plucked a tree leaf out. "It's not bad or good, just how you are." "What about Aizawa and 13? They continued to walk down the halls of UA. Izuku wasn't sure where to. She sighed. "They'll be fine. They were hurt pretty badly, but they will recover soon enough." "That's good." "Where are we going?" She chucked, self-deprecating. "We forgot to get you checked out by a doctor when we took you in. I doubt you've had any shots or a physical in a long time." "Shots? For what? I can do everything myself. I don't get sick." He complained like a child. Namuri raised an eyebrow at his response. "You still need to be checked out. I'm sure it'll be fine." She opened the door that said nurse's office. Izuku met eyes with the old lady who hit him during the entrance exam. He turned to Nem. I don't like her. Namuri furrowed her brow at that and looked between him and Recovery Girl. Why? She hit me after the entrance exam and called me foolish. I don't like her, he said stubbornly. I apologize for that. It's a habit, Recovery Girl said. Izuku narrowed his eyes at her. Are you apologizing because you hit me or from me to get over it? Just because Izuku was naive at many things in the world, he returned to doesn't mean he's an idiot. Recovery Girl shifted with her cane. To be honest, a bit of both. She shrugged. I've seen too many reckless youths get permanently injured doing what you did at the exam. If that shrapnel hit somewhere more vital, then she left the rest unsaid. I still don't like you. Izuku walked into the office for Nem's benefit. Recovery Girl shook her head and looked at Namuri, who gave her a look. She got the message, and the elderly hero shoved everything in her mind aside. I was told you can heal yourself at the cellular level. That includes any infections and anything foreign to your body. Izuku nodded. You want an example? A tendril extended from his arm with a blade poised to slash at his arm. No, don't do that. I just wanted to confirm what I've been told. She huffed. Have you had any recent infections of any sort? Izuku shrugged. A few ticks tried to latch onto me, but I ate them. Nothing survives on me without me letting it. She paused. How did you eat them? They latched onto my leg, but I sucked them in, I guess. Oh, like one of those Venus flytraps, but they get pulled under instead of closing over. From there, I break them down for anything useful. Do you taste them? Nem asked from a chair in the corner. She looked just a bit disgusted at the image of ticks being devoured. Nope, he said cheerily to her. All right then, I am going to need a blood sample, and I guess the physical is not necessary since your body is unique to you. After that, all the vaccines you missed over the years. Recovery Girl held a needle for drawing blood. Izuku let her grab his arm and stick the needle into his vein after she cleaned the surface skin with a wipe. Once she got enough blood, she removed the needle and the hole healed. She moved the skin around the previous puncture to examine. She set the blood aside and picked up a tray of syringes filled with something Izuku didn't trust. Namuri saw his curled lip when he saw the syringes and chuckled. The faster you are done, the faster you are out of here. Izuku grumbled but held still as Recovery Girl stuck syringe after syringe into both arms and sometimes thigh. He felt the liquid enter his body and considered containing it and ejecting it later. Instead of doing that, he grumbled and circulated the vaccines through his body faster and integrated them into his body. The only pleasure he got from the whole experience was when Recovery Girl struggled with sticking the needle into his compressed muscles. That should be the last one for a while now. Recovery Girl capped the needle she just pulled out of his arm and set it with the others. You may feel odd as they settle into your body. Come to me if anything feels wrong. Izuku stood up and turned to the old lady. I still don't like you. That's fine, boy. But I still need to make sure you are up to date with your shots. Now, shoo. She waved at him to leave. Izuku growled like an animal and left in a huff. Namuri followed behind and waited to speak. Why don't you like her so much? Because she hit me and called me foolish. He crossed his arms. What about when training? Do you dislike the people who hit you? She worried about the behavior. No, that's different. That's like pups fighting each other to practice for them to hunt. She just hit me for no reason. And the villains that attacked you? I don't like them either, except that one guy. He was all right. He nodded to himself. Which one? The wolf-looking one he didn't fight. He sat when I pushed him down and he stayed there. Namuri remembered hearing about many villains hurt badly around one sitting and shaking wolf villain. When they arrested him, he came without protest. She paused and debated whether to ask something but pushed forward. Did Inko hit you? Izuku stopped and looked at her in surprise. I don't think so. Why? Oh, I just thought that was why you don't like to be hit. She felt stupid now. Oh no, I just don't like to get hit for no reason, he said simply. She huffed a laugh and ruffled his hair. He leaned into her touch and smiled at the warmth he felt from her. I'm getting peckish. Let's go get something to eat, yeah? Izuku beamed at her and followed her to the parking lot to find something to eat. They got into a large car and put on music Izuku enjoyed. They found a restaurant that made sandwiches Namiri thought Izuku might enjoy, and she was right. Izuku devoured his sandwich and looked sad at his empty wrapper once he finished. She laughed at his expression and got another for him as she finished hers. They picked up another order she placed for the rest of the staff back at UA and headed back. Izuku helped Namiri distribute sandwiches to the working staff, and they gave him grateful smiles in return. When he finished, Izuku sat on Aizawa's couch in the teacher's lounge and yawned. He stretched like a cat and then rolled under the couch for a nap. That has to be bad for his back, right? Present Mike said as they stared at Izuku rolled up under the couch and snoring softly. He can shift his whole body however he wants, he'll be fine. Vlad King said, do you think he got that habit from Aizawa? Or did he do that before coming here? Cementos asked. Namiri took a few more pictures with her phone with a smile. I wouldn't be surprised if he took naps around the woods whenever he felt like it. The long weekend passed without much fanfare for Izuku. He talked with his friends on his phone. Izuku talked to Shoji about helping him with his quirk. The big team began to work on shifting his arms into different non-human organs after reading what Izuku had recommended to him. There were some trials and errors, but he managed to make ears similar to an owl. Monday came and Izuku walked into class and was greeted by Mina first. Hey Izuku, he gave her a beaming smile. Heya, Mina, Kaken butted in without any shame. Izuku, Mom wants you to come over already. All right, when so I can tell Nem. He agreed without any hesitation. He paused and sent a message on his phone. He read a reply and shoved it back into his pocket. She wants you to come after school. Great. It'll be nice to see your house again. He shoved the thought that his old home was near his to the back of his mind. Everyone should be seated. Classes will begin momentarily, Ida said to everyone. Izuku sat in front of Shinso and greeted him happily. He returned the greeting with a lazy smile. Shinso was glad to see his friend well after the USJ. Time ticked by and everyone began to talk in their seats about who will be their substitute teacher. It's still Aizawa, he's coming, Izuku said the asked question. Zero turned to him. Did the other teachers tell you? He shook his head. I can smell him coming. He's still hurt though. How hurt is hurt? Jairu asked. Izuku shrugged. I don't know, I haven't seen him since the USJ. But he's behind the door now. He pointed at the door and it swung open to a bandaged Aizawa. The class shouted their worry about their teacher's condition. I'm perfectly fine to teach, but you all have more ahead of you. He paused and everyone tensed. Izuku sniffed the air and everything seemed normal to him. The sports festival is coming. He finished dramatically. The class erupted in excitement as Izuku sat and nodded along even though he had no clue what that is. Is that Wise so close to the attack? Jairu asked. The security was tripled and we don't want to lose face by pushing it back or canceling it altogether, Aizawa explained. Begin to prepare, that's all I have. Now, let me sleep. He gently lowered himself to the ground and rolled under his desk. Everyone chatted before the next class began and Izuku tried to use his phone to look up what the sports festival was. He managed to find an app and typed in sports festival, but nothing happened. He pouted at his phone and tried again, but nothing happened. Cementos walked through the door and he put his phone away with some annoyance at his phone not working. Lunch came and Izuku was dragged by Mina to the cafeteria again instead of going out hunting. He got his big sandwich from Lunch Rush and sat with his friends. As soon as everyone sat down, he asked, "What's the sports festival?" I tried to look it up on my phone, but it didn't work. He pulled his phone out and showed them what he had done. Everyone looked at the screen and it showed the sports festival typed in the notes application. Mina burst into giggles and Shinso snorted a laugh. Jairu slapped Mina's arms. Leave him be, he doesn't know. I'm sorry. It's just funny is all. I'm not laughing at you, Zuku. It's just funny to see something like this. Mina calmed down and cleared her throat. The sports festival is like a big event for all of the UA students to play types of games to show off our quirks and abilities for attention. For the people in the support course, they want to show off their inventions. Hero course, so pro heroes send us internships to work for them and then maybe work for them when we graduate. General education, so they might move into a hero course if they get far enough. And the business course, I'm not sure. Practice maybe, she shrugged as popped the tab on her soda pop, took a sip. Yep. That's the gist of it. Shinso nodded along. Games. That sounds fun. Izuku had stars in his eyes but refocused on what Mina had just drunk. What's that? He pointed at the can of soda. Mina looked at what he pointed at and grinned. It's a drink, try it. She slid the can to him. She got a disapproving look from Shoji but quickly switched attention to Izuku. Shinso looked on eagerly at his friend's reaction. Jairu also looked on without stopping anything, and Mina slipped her phone out to video the whole thing. Izuku picked the can up and looked inside curiously. He took a sip and cringed away at the feeling of the fizzing in his mouth. Your water is spicy. He stuck his tongue out and shook his head. It's so sweet but tasty. Shinso gave a laugh that more closely resembled a cat coughing up a hairball. Spicy water. He got some looks from other tables, but he never noticed. Mina put away her phone with a grin. She patted Izuku next to her on the shoulder. I'm sorry, but I couldn't resist seeing your reaction to something like this. So mean. Izuku pouted slightly but knew his friends were just having fun. Shoji and Jairu both smiled at his reaction but kept themselves in check. Mina picked up Izuku's phone and found the camera app. Here, you need one of these. Smile. She leaned on Izuku and took a selfie with everyone in their little group in the frame. She took it and it came out perfectly. She smiled, sent it to all his contacts, and then set it as his lock screen. There. She gave it back to him to see. Izuku looked at the picture on his phone and beamed. Neat. I like this. He examined the picture with joy. Mina smiled at his infectious smile and took a sip of her soda. She set it down and caught Jairu's eye. She gave Mina a smirk and her eyes flashed down at the can and back to her. Mina furrowed her brow and the realization came to her. An indirect kiss. She looked to the others to see if they saw, and both Shinso and Shoji gave her knowing smiles. She blushed more than before as Izuku continued to be oblivious to the situation with his new background on his phone. Chapter 14. Dinner and Chats. Izuku packed his laptop away and stretched his back. He turned to Kaken, who just finished packing his things to go home for the day. All right, let's go. Izuku led the way to the door. He opened it and a crowd stood behind it. Izuku stared at everyone. Hello. Is this normal, Kaken? He greeted them all in a group and asked his old friend. They are here to scout the competition in the sports festival. Some might want to join the hero course if they didn't manage the first time around. He explained. Oh, that makes sense. Well, I'm Izuku. Nice to meet all of you. He beamed at them all. He sniffed the air and caught a familiar blonde hair. Monoma, you passed the exam. That's great. Ah, hello, Izuku. Nice to see you again. I thank you for being so understanding in the exam. It's a shame you are in Class 1A and not in mine. Monoma greeted his acquaintance. Hey, I was thinking if you copied my quirk and changed some things in your body, would they stay after the time limit wore off? Because if it stayed, you could do many things. He got close to Monoma's bubble without any hesitation as everyone watched the odd boy. That does sound intriguing. Like what? Monoma was a bit of a quirk nerd and was very interested in what Izuku was talking about. Izuku raised his hand to show his skeletal structure covered in steel, but Shinso stopped him. Let's not traumatize the whole first year with your... He waved his hand at Izuku's whole body. Abilities. Izuku, let's go already. Kaken called from down the hall. Coming, Kaken. See you later, Monoma. Bye, Shinso. Bye, Mina. He said his farewells. Later, Zuku. Mina said in return. He's weird. A gray-haired boy next to Monoma said. It's better to have him like this instead of how he was at the USJ. The remaining one class inside shivered at the memory of Izuku tearing apart the monster and taking his trophy from its prone body. What's that supposed to mean? Monoma asked Shinso. He saw how Izuku treated Shinso and could figure out that they were friends. No. You have to wait for the surprise like the rest of the class did. Shinso said. He was terrifying, Mina said. But he's great the rest of the time. Someone's biased. Jairu smirked at the redding of Mina's ears. Izuku got off the train with Kaken and followed him down the street. Izuku looked around with very faint memories as he walked. He stopped at a park and could remember he and Kaken played at it when they were young. The blonde noticed he has stopped and waited for him in silence. He shook himself out of his thoughts and caught up with the blonde. Kaken walked up to the door of a modest home and Izuku remembered it faintly. He followed. "We're here," Kaken called inside. Mitsuki ran around the corner and pushed Kaken out of the way to hug Izuku behind him. "Oi! Izuku, I'm so glad you are okay." She almost had a heart attack when Yue called to tell them about the USJ. Masaru patted his disgruntled son's shoulder. "How was school?" "Back to normal, sports festival is still on," he said to his father. Mitsuki pulled Izuku to the couches and sat him down. "Come on. Tell me, how have you been?" Izuku gently lowered himself to the couch. Creaked only slightly. "You've gotten heavy, haven't you?" She laughed. Masaru joined them and Kaken dropped his bag next to the couch and sat on the recliner. "Yeah. I've gotten heavy from both my bones and muscles." He held his arm out and a layer of muscle was exposed and the bone. The muscles looked like a solid mass of red cords and the forearm bones were both covered in silver metal. Mitsuki and Masaru looked shocked at the display but adjusted quickly. Mitsuki took his arm and examined the exposed arm. No blood flowed out. "I told you his quirk was freaky," Kaken said with a smirk. "What is your quirk?" Masaru was also peering inside Izuku's arm. "I can manipulate my cells and make them do what I want." He extended tendrils to wave, for example. "Does this hurt?" Mitsuki asked, gesturing to the open arm. "Nope, just feels odd is all." "If you can control your cells, then you did this to your body?" "Why?" Mitsuki gently tapped the metal on the bone. Izuku let them play with his arm and explain. "Well, when I first discovered my quirk, I couldn't do much else than shift my legs, grow claws, or heal cuts and broken bones. So, I went to find a library because I remembered that they had books about everything. I wanted to do more with my quirk and make my body ideal." "Ideal for what?" Mitsuki let go of his arm and it closed up. "For hunting at first, now for being a hero. I met one and decided to try the exam out with Shinso. That's my friend that lives near the library I went to learn." He smiled at the memory. "This Shinso never told their parents about you living in the woods?" Masaru asked. "Not my fault. I never said to keep it a secret, but I was fine where I was anyway." He shrugged. Mitsuki got quiet for a moment and asked, "Was it hard?" Izuku's smile dropped a little. "At first it was. I was lucky to find a stream with fish in it and a cave nearby. I got my quirk around 7, I think, and that made stuff easier. When I got used to my quirk, it became fun." He tried to smile again to reassure Mitsuki. It didn't quite work because she began to cry again and pulled Izuku into a hug. She didn't say anything but held him and he gently returned the hug. "I'm happy you're back." She pulled back and wiped her face. "Tell me, why do I smell a perfume that doesn't belong to me?" She got a wicked gleam in her eye. Izuku had noticed the odor that clung to some of the girls in his class and could tell Mina's from the others. He also knew when the smell stuck to him during the cafeteria. "Oh, that's Mina's. We took a picture together. I'll show you." He pulled his phone out and the screen lit up with the background of Mina's arm around him and leaning toward him with a beaming smile. Shinso had a lazy smile. Jairu smiled normally, and Shoji had a peace sign on one of his hands. He pointed at the pink girl next to him. "That's her." Mitsuki took the phone and examined the girl that was very close to Izuku. Masaru peeked over her shoulder and had the same thought as his wife. "Wow, Izuku, you work fast. And she's so pretty too." She tried to tease. "Yeah, I've made 3 new friends and Kaken counts too, I guess." "Of course I count. And yeah, she is pretty." He nodded along. Mitsuki turned full to him when her tease didn't work. "What have you guys done together?" She tried again. "Mom," Kaken tried to say, but he was waved to quiet down. "Lots of things. She taught me a few things when I didn't what they were. I even brought her to my den in the woods. She is really nice." He smiled innocently. Mitsuki's eyebrow almost touched her hairline. "Mom, he doesn't get it. He's been in the woods for 10 years. He isn't going to have the same thought process as anyone else would." Kaken explained. Izuku tilted his head in confusion. "She's trying to tease you about Mina," Masaru explained with a smile. "I still don't understand that, and Nem refuses to explain it to me." He grumbled. "Oh, you sweet innocent boy." Mitsuki ruffled his hair. "Will you tell me what it is to me?" Izuku's eyes shone. Nope, and stood up. Izuku pouted and Mitsuki chuckled. Come on, I've made dinner. Mitsuki went to the kitchen to serve everyone with Masaru adding some last ingredients to the meal. Kaken set the table and Izuku stood awkwardly outside the kitchen. Kaken caught his eye and jerked his chin to help him with the plates. Izuku copied his friend on how to place them in front of each chair. Izuku saw the chairs and was very doubtful they will hold his weight. He'll deal with it 2 minutes into the future. Once done setting plates of food on the table, everyone dug in. Izuku was smart enough to wait for everyone to start eating first to copy their way of eating. After all, this will be his first time using utensils in 10 years. His plan for sitting on the very fragile chair was to extend tendrils to the ground to support his weight. Carapace-like material covered the tendrils and he sat over the wooden chair. So, tell us, Izuku, that Mina girl was awfully close to you. Katsuki, is she like that with everyone or just him? Mitsuki went back to trying to tease his nephew. Kaken snorted softly. Only him, every time they are close. He held nothing back. Leave the boy be. Masaru tried but was promptly ignored. He shook his head fondly at them. Yep, I think it's what Nem told me about girls being weird. It doesn't make too much sense since Jairu, the other girl, isn't weird like Mina. Izuku mimicked them using the utensils and was proud to say he was successful at it. Granted, he cheated by extending a tendril under his spoon for more control.
Nem.
Is that the other woman at court with you? Mitsuki asked. It's Midnight. He even took her family name, Kaken explained. The 18-plus hero Midnight? She sounded doubtful about her watching over Izuku. When the heroes arrived at the USJ, she went to check on him first even though I was right next to him. She didn't even notice me until she was sure Izuku was all right. He gave the lewd hero some support. Mitsuki made a thoughtful sound. That's good to hear, but back to Mina. Kaken groaned but was ignored as well. What do you think of her? Mitsuki leaned in. Izuku chewed and swallowed the chicken bone he had. Think of her. He was confused. Kaken raised a hand to stop his mother from asking something else. He doesn't understand. What she is trying to ask is if you like her? Of course I do. If I didn't, I wouldn't talk to her. He tilted his head as if it was obvious. That's good to hear you got good friends around you. Masaru cut them off before Mitsuki could continue down their planned road. She shot him a small glare and turned back to her nephew. What about UA? How do you like it there? It's okay. The woods there aren't as big as the other one, but it's nice. They gave me a room and everything, but I like to sleep in my den. The library has lots of different subjects I can find. He struggled to get a piece of meat and instead extended a tendril to the end of his spoon to snag it. They kept chatting for a while longer as they ate dinner. Izuku was happy to reconnect with his old family friends. Mitsuki didn't talk too much about their past since Inko was part of a lot of it, and she wanted to have a nice dinner. The time came and it began to get dark. Mitsuki tried to get him to stay the night, but Izuku was fine to head back to his den. Kaken rode with him to the station where they get off for UA to make sure Izuku didn't get lost. It was very clear to see where to go from the train station. The gates of UA opened automatically for him and he strolled in and headed to his furs. In the week that came, Izuku studied new things in the library, but he was beginning to run out of things he could mimic with his quirk. He knew the next step would be to try and mimic quirks, but he would have to see how the quirk of a person interacts with their body. For example, he couldn't mimic someone who breathes fire without knowing where the flammable gas came from and how it is made and ejected with the source of ignition. He could try, but putting a flammable gas inside his body sounds incredibly dangerous, even for him. Instead, he helped Shoji and Shinso with the upcoming sports festival. Shoji began to try different animal organs on his hands. He was very grateful for Izuku's help. Shinso, on the other hand, Izuku helped with his endurance and stamina. His quirk had some training, but there was only so much he could help with that. During one of the breaks from the exercise in the woods, Izuku asked Shinso, "You remember when I went to Kaken's house for dinner?" Shinso took a swig of water and nodded. Suki, that's Kaken's mom, was asking a lot of questions about Mina when she found out we were friends. Is that normal? Shinso had a pretty good idea of what kind of questions. What kind of questions? He smiled, like what kinds of things she taught me or if I like her. Does your mom ask you those kinds of questions? It's weird. He tilted his head in confusion. Shinso smiled again at being right. Well, when she was asking you about Mina, it was supposed to be in a romantic sense. She was trying to tease you about having a close friend that was a girl because that's how it usually is. He shrugged. Izuku paused and processed the answer. Romantic sense like for a mate or wife? Shinso breathed in the water he had just drunk and was drowning in the middle of the woods. He coughed up some water and turned to his dear friend. Yes, something like that. For many, it's embarrassing to talk about having or getting a girlfriend, much less a wife. Izuku made an O with his mouth in realization. That makes some sense. Wait, why was Suki only talking about Mina and not Jairu? Because you talk about and to Mina more than Jairu, and that usually signifies your interest in her more than Jairu. Interested in her as a mate? Girlfriend, he corrected. Are you interested in her as a girlfriend? Izuku thought about it for a long moment. I'm not sure. I do like her and talking with her. Shinso hummed and thought about all those soap operas he watched with his mom. Okay, how about this? I want you to imagine Mina holding hands and kissing someone else. What do you feel? Izuku pictured it and his chest felt cold at the image. He felt anger flare up and his fingers sharpened slightly. He looked in surprise at his hands. Oh, I didn't like that. Does that mean I want her as my mate? Girlfriend, he corrected again. Maybe, or maybe you are just protective. Okay. The same scenario, but it's Jairu instead of Mina. He stopped and pictured it and he felt nothing similar to before. Nothing. He shook his head. Does that mean I should ask her to be my mate? Shinso shrugged. Are you interested in having a girlfriend? He emphasized the right word. Izuku hummed in deep thought and Shinso spoke again. How about this? Keep things as they are now until after the sports festival so she doesn't get distracted by you asking her out. Ask her to be my mate after the festival, all right? He nodded and stood back up. Are you doing that on purpose? Shinso narrowed his eyes at his friend. Izuku responded by giving him a cheeky smile. I swear. He threw a rock at him, but Izuku was already gone with a laugh echoing between the trees. So, he got back up for some training by trying to tag Izuku. His stamina has benefited greatly from this. The day of the festival was here and Izuku was annoyed. Why is it so loud? Even shifting my ears to normal. It's loud. Jairu nodded along with him. That's how the festival is. It's very popular with everyone. The stands are sure to be full, and that doesn't even count for the people watching at home and not just in Japan. Izuku took all that in. Wow, that's a lot of people watching. You're not nervous? Mina asked. No, why? Izuku tilted his head in question. He followed Shinso's instructions and acted normal with Mina even if he kept having that weird feeling when he remembered imagining Mina with someone else. Before she could say why it's normal to be nervous about being watched by millions of people, Todoroki approached Izuku and Kaken, who was sitting near Izuku. In power, I believe I am stronger compared to the two of you, he said to the two old friends. Izuku interrupted Kaken just as he was going to speak. It's not fair to compare between you and me. You shoot ice and I make my body do things. It's not the same. He moved his hands up and down in the scales motion. But you can compare to Kaken. He looked between the two and hummed in thought. He interrupted Todoroki just as he was going to speak. It's hard to tell. Kaken is good against one-on-one and less in a big area. You are the opposite. But you also have to remember he can shoot fire too, Shinso added. Izuku's neck snapped, literally, to Todoroki and his eyes shone. Really? Show me. Show me. He almost bounced as his friends looked slightly panicked at the noise that came from his neck. Todoroki was completely thrown off kilter by the feral boy's behavior but turned quickly when he was reminded of the other part of his quirk. I will never use fire, he almost hissed. Izuku came to a stop and observed Todoroki. Why? Does it hurt you? He was confused why someone wouldn't use their quirk. You wouldn't understand. He turned to leave. I don't. That's why I'm asking. Izuku only got more confused as Todoroki left. Mina patted his shoulder. Don't worry about it. Some people don't like their quirks or parts of them. Izuku pursed his lips in contemplation. I don't get it, but okay. He shrugged it off. Line up. The sports festival is beginning, Yairuzo said to the room. Izuku forgot about what they were talking about and excitedly got up to begin the games they told him about. He was practically vibrating to everyone's amusement as they began to walk out into the sunlight. Shinso smiled behind his friend at his innocent behavior. That's a wrap, legends, for part 2 of What If Deku Had Cell's Abilities. Big thanks to Big Teddy G3498 for this epic collab. You guys are absolutely crushing it with the support, and I can't thank you enough. If you're hyped for part 3, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment with your theories. I can't wait to dive into more of this with you. Stay legendary, and I'll catch you in the next one.